Commissioner Quain is absent. He has notified me before. Commissioner Shaw.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Franklin.
Present.
Commissioner Giminahu.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Commissioner Lakhani is absent, and I am here. So we do have a quorum. First order of business is to ratify the minutes from the last meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the last
So
meeting?
moved.
To move, all in
Second.
favor, say aye. I'm sorry?
Second.
Yes, all in favor, say aye, or just raise your hand. Say aye. Okay, motion passes, the minutes have been approved. Thank you. We have first two cases tonight. Case 2021-32P and 2021-33P are both related. In 23P, it's a site plan approval at 9800 Lawler Avenue. Niles North High School is requesting site plan approval for a 3-story, 5,200 square foot addition to the north side of the building for administrative and collaborative use and any relief that's discovered during the review of this case. In related case 2021-33P, this is a parking determination at 9800 Lawler Avenue. Parking determinations will be set by the commission, and our determination is final. The parking determination cases do not go before the board for final approval. Okay, do we have the petitioner here for Niles North? Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
Could
how
you
are
give us
you?
your name and your address and your affiliation to Niles North?
Athy Tufexis with Studio GC Architects, 223 West Jackson Boulevard in Chicago, 60606, and we are the district architects.
Okay.
I'm Pat Callahan with Studio GC, 223 West Jackson, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. We are the district architect.
Okay. Before we proceed, can I ask you to raise your hand and I'll swear you in electronically? You affirm the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you. Counselor, is there a notice in order?
Yes, notice is proper and correct.
Thank you very much. So who wants to speak first? And just give us a kind of an overview of your request here for site plan approval. Whoever wants to speak up.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you for having us this evening. So we are proposing a 3-story addition to Niles North High School. It's approximately a 43,000 square foot addition, 3 stories that will be located at the current entrance of the school. The purpose of the addition is to provide additional office and more secure office space for existing staff in the building, as well as to provide a floor for dedicated kind of future learning environments and spaces for the students. The proposed building height does not exceed the maximum existing building height of the building currently, and we are not protruding any closer to Lawler than the existing addition is. We're actually kind of nestled into the existing entry plaza nook that is present on the north side of the building.
The only additional thing that I would add is the purpose of the addition is not to provide for any expansion or additional student. It's really intended to relocate existing student services such as guidance, registrar, administration to a location where we can provide a more secure zone to keep students safe from public and visitors. Secondarily, the spaces that are being vacated will be recaptured for some much needed existing space for flexible learning environments as well as special education within the existing building. So we don't anticipate any additional students. It's really to reallocate space for the purposes of education as well as safety.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the petitioner regarding this case? Not hearing any questions. I'm going to ask the staff to give the commission its staff report and also to report on the parking determination. Matt Brandmeier, our planning director, will give the report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would first like to request that my reports for the site plan and the parking determination be made part of the record.
Okay, that your request is granted.
Thank you. So it's a pretty straightforward proposal. We recommend approval of the addition and the site plan. For the parking determination, we evaluate the parking across the entire campus. They meet the minimum requirements for their operations. The parking determination is for, especially for their assembly uses, which is the gymnasium and the auditorium. And we recommend that one space for every 3 attendees for events in the gym in the auditorium.
And do they meet that requirement?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Okay. Any question of staff? Any questions for the staff by the commissioners? None? Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask if anyone in the audience or the electronic audience have a question or a comment on cases 2021 32P and 2021 33P. Give a minute. Alex, anybody offering or wanting to get in on a question?
It doesn't appear so, no.
Okay. Matt, have we received any written questions or comments by email or letter?
No questions, no comments, no phone calls, or no communication whatsoever about this petition.
Okay. All right. Very good. Therefore, I'm ready for a motion. Commissioners, you can unmute yourselves.
Motion to approve case 2021 32P as presented.
That's Ross.
Second.
Okay. Second. Who is that? Thank you. Commissioner Franklin. Okay. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell is absent. Commissioner Quinn is absent. Commissioner Shaw.
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
Commissioner Girahu.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'll vote yes. Commissioner Lakani is absent. Okay, on the parking determination, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as presented, case number 2021-33P.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. That was Commissioner
Girahu.
Girahu. Thank you. Okay, call for the vote. Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin,
Yes.
Commissioner Girahu,
Yes.
Commissioner Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Ross.
Commissioner Matei approves.
Excuse me, I forgot. Thank
He's
you.
very
Thank you
formal.
for correcting me. And I approve. Motion passes. Again, these cases still have to go before the Board of Trustees for final approval. And again, they meet on the first and third Mondays of every month. Okay. Thank you, Niles North, and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your
And
time this
have
evening.
a happy new year
You too.
and a safe
Thank you.
one.
Yes.
Next case is case 2021-25P. Site plan approval at 9801 Woods Drive. And let me read this. At the November 18th meeting of the Plan Commission, we heard two cases concerning the development of a Carvana car sale facility. Subsequent to that meeting, the Community Development Department received additional information from the petitioner in response to Commissioner Berman's request for additional information regarding 4 specific issues pertaining to the site plan in Planning Commission case 2021-25P. The additional information has been reviewed by staff, discussed with the petitioner and other concerned parties. As a result, the staff has drafted 4 additional conditions for review. I have requested that the matter be heard further by the commission solely for the opportunity to consider the 4 additional conditions. Thus, the recommendation voted on by this commission on November 18th to concur with the staff's report then will go to the Board of Trustees. It may be amended to contain any or all of the 4 additional conditions as we discuss them tonight. As we are all aware, the significant and overwhelming new spread of the Omicron pandemic has brought new recommendations for strict mitigation efforts to protect the public from illness. These new protocols come from the CDC, the state of Illinois, and from the Village of Skokie Health and Human Services Department. Therefore, the mayor and the Village Health and Human Services Department Director have instructed that tonight's Plan Commission meeting and all other Village Commission meetings will be held virtual for the foreseeable future. The following guidelines are to provide orderly and civil discourse at our Plan Commission meeting. These guidelines are presented to provide an opportunity for everyone to be heard, but to ensure that everyone is heard and that all relevant points are made without repetitious or extraneous comments. Myself and the Assistant Corporation Counsel will be using a standard of reasonableness and common sense. First, for any person who wishes to speak tonight must have registered pursuant to the rules, the village website by 7:30 tonight. They have been admitted to our Zoom waiting room and will be provided an opportunity to speak for no more than 3 minutes after the 4 additional conditions have been presented by staff and commented on by the petitioner. Comments from the public shall be limited to 4 additional conditions, limited to the 4 additional conditions and not to any other part of the Carvana matter since it has otherwise been heard by the commission. Second, the order of proceedings tonight will begin with the plan staff, which will present an additional recommended conditions to the previously recommended site plan approval. At that time, the plan commissioners may ask questions of the plan staff. Thereafter, the petitioner will present its response to the questions raised by Commissioner Berman. The plan commissioners will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the petitioner. When that process is complete, individuals who have signed on the list to speak will be unmuted on Zoom for their comments. Please direct your comments or questions directly to the commission as a whole and not to the petitioner. Finally, the petitioner will be given time to respond to the comments and questions. Thirdly, individual statements will be allowed to the extent that they are relevant to the matter at hand, not repetitious, not extraneous, not a matter of personal taste, concerning a matter profitable by the petitioner, and not presented as testimony or argument. Fourth, there is one individual who has requested an opportunity to ask questions directly of the witnesses presented by Carvana. We are permitting this opportunity to him tonight. His questions shall also be relevant to the matter at hand, not repetitious, not extraneous, not a matter of personal taste, and concern a matter of profitable by the petitioner. Finally, we ask that everyone is courteous and respectful of each other. After all the proceedings, commissioners, the matter before you is whether to amend the previously recommended site plan approval from our November 18th, 2021 meeting to include all of the 4 additional conditions proposed by staff and a subsequent report. It actually should be any or all of the 4 additional conditions proposed by staff tonight. Okay, without further ado, Matt, why don't you take over? One meeting to include all four additional conditions proposed by staff and a subsequent report. It actually should be any or all of the four additional conditions proposed by staff tonight. Okay, without further ado, Matt, why don't you
And those last.
meeting to include all or
Alex, do you hear that echo there?
proposed by staff and a subsequent report.
Does everyone hear that?
All of the four additional concerns.
Okay, there we go. Can everyone see my screen? Paul, can you see?
Yes.
my screen? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So these are the four additional recommended conditions for approval of the site plan. This first one is a replacement of, if everyone could mute, that would be probably best. The first one is a replacement of the current recommendation for dimming the lighting on the site. So this recommends that it be dimmed to 50% between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And that is defined by half of what our ordinance standard is. So that would be 0.35 vertical foot candle and 0.15 horizontal foot candle. This will replace the existing condition in the recommended conditions of approval that was approved by the Plan Commission at their November meeting. The second one is that the applicant shall install and maintain American Bird Conservancy approved window markers to the exterior of all glass surfaces on the building up to 40 or 54 feet, 10 inches high to reduce the potential for bird strikes. This is the recommended condition, and the applicant will have more information regarding this. The third additional at their November meeting. Additional recommendation is for multi-car haulers. Deliveries will only occur between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Services on the
Hey,
building.
Matt, hold on a quick second. Alex, can you mute the plan commission? I think that's where the echo is coming from.
There we go.
There you are.
To go over that again, if everyone didn't hear, multi-car haulers deliveries will occur between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. only. Then the last one is that the petitioner agrees to the revised truck circulation route to utilize the northernmost driveway and drive aisle as shown on the site plan dated December 17, 2000.
I'm muted. Let me go in 1 second.
To go over that again, if everyone did hear, multi-car haulers deliveries.
Okay, so I just muted everyone.
Hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Then the last one is that the petitioner agrees to revise truck circulation route to utilize the northernmost driveway and drive aisle as shown on the site plan dated December 17, 2000.
I'm muted.
Okay, Commissioner Berman, do you concur with the staff on these 4 points?
I concur that these were the issues. I don't concur with staff's recommendations. In fact, the first time I saw them was today and never had a chance to discuss them. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But are these, is this basically what your concerns were at the November 18th meeting?
Well, the concern was dimming of the lights during migratory bird season. I don't know what these measurements are. I'm not certain relative to some of the support documents that have been sent by various organizations that this would agree with. Number one. Number two is the other was dealing with either the building surface area, either glass either using feather-friendly glass or wrapping the building in a material that would prevent or diminish bird strikes. So I would agree with the issue again. I'm not certain how we got 54 feet. So that's an open issue in my mind. The car hauler deliveries with limits between 7 a.m. and 10 certainly was the one issue, was the limitation of the hours of delivery. I don't know, kind of had no part of the discussion of these hours. So again, I can't assert anything there other than that was an issue. And then also revising the route of delivery within the parking lot to diminish or include greater distance between the trucks and the Optimum building was one of the issues. And again, I wasn't part of that discussion, so I have no say in whether or not this is accurate in terms of what was agreed upon.
Okay, but these are the 4 points that we are presenting to petitioner tonight.
Again, these are the 4 general topics. I would not agree with at least some of the recommendations.
Okay. Matt,
Yes.
turn the meeting back over to you.
Well, I was wrapping up on the truck circulation route, which the petitioner will show the actual plan in their proposal. Essentially, this route, moves truck traffic farther away from the Optima buildings. And then they're going to post a right turn only sign, which will cause trucks to turn right. We don't expect that they would ever turn left because they're going to the expressway, and they'll use Old Orchard Ramp for that. But they will be directed to turn right only, and which takes them away from going south on Woods Drive, and then to Gulf Road. So that restriction is in place. Yeah, those are the 4 under staff's impression that we recommend approval, and this at this point improves the overall site plan.
Okay, very good. Is the petitioner out there in
Yes.
Somerville?
Can you hear and see
Oh.
me?
Not yet.
Okay.
Let's see. Where are you? Oh, yes.
Okay.
There you
How are
are.
you?
Hello, Ms. Buell. Good
Wonderful.
evening. Happy New
How are
Year.
you doing?
Good.
Great. Shall I jump in there?
You can, and do you have a chorus of people with you?
Yes, actually, quite a few people. Let me tell you who is here. First of all, the witnesses that appeared on the 18th, which we promised to bring back so that that individual could cross-examine them if he wishes. And that would be Brett Sassenberg, Vice President of Retail Design and Development for Carvana, George Kissel, Land Use Planner and President of Okren Kissel Associates, Inc., Mary Lindberger, MAI Certified Appraiser with Lindberger and Company, Emily Klingensmith, Lighting Expert with Schuler Shook, and Bill Grieve, Traffic Engineer with Kimley Horn. So that's who are the witnesses. And then I do want to reintroduce myself, Donna Pugh, partner with Foley and Lardner, land use attorney. And my co-counsel who's on with us is Bill McKenna, another partner at Foley, as well as my colleague, Mike Noonan, who's also on. And then we want to reassure you that the purpose of us being here tonight is to explain the proposal and all the work that's gone into getting ready for tonight, looking at all the options for the bird mitigation remedies and looking at the truck routes and all those different things we are going to present. So we wouldn't expect you to be ready to say yes or no just based on the actual legal terminology that's being
Sure.
proposed.
Okay,
but we
I'm
hope
going to insist that since your people were at the meeting and were sworn in, I'm going to remind them that they are still under oath.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you know
Thank you.
what? We have one additional witness who was not there. Let me, I'm kind of getting out of order here, but let me do that. In addition, we're joined tonight by Paul Grollo, Vice President of Feather Friendly Technologies, which has, that company has 15 years experience with mitigating bird strikes. And we've submitted Paul Grollo's expert credentials, and we'd ask that he be accepted as an expert.
Yes, and I will put him, if he's present, would you say here, please? See
Paul?
here?
Yes, he's here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, sir, I'm gonna swear you in. Could you raise your right hand, please?
Okay.
Do you affirm that the testimony given tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay,
Ms.
so I just
Pugh?
want to say just a couple things, Mr. Chairman Luke. So of course, procedurally, as you read the matter, you know, we were last here on November 18th. And just to clarify the legal framework, so by a vote of 5-2, the text amendment was recommended for approval to the village board. And by a vote of 5-2, the site plan was recommended approval. However, with conditions that more detail be provided on those 4 items that you discussed. And then, so our purpose here is to give you more information on those 4 items, and with the hopes that you will agree to allow those 4 conditions that are proposed to be added to the staff recommendation, to the Plan Commission recommendation, and proceed to the village board. We're hoping we get your vote yes on those, but I know that either way it will proceed to the village board. We just would like the recommendation and support is what we're hoping for.
Your assumption is correct.
Okay. Now, with that, what we'd like to do is turn things over to Brett Sassenberg and have him tell you the various things that he has done and our team has done to address those 4 issues.
Thank you,
Brett?
Donna. Commissioner Luke, members of the Plan Commission, can you hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think we can get into the weeds of what we've done since our hearing on the 18th. There were 4 items from the hearing that we were asked to reconsider or consider further. In addition to that, we've also been the Appearance Commission since, at which point we got a unanimous approval with 1 request that we added some landscape islands on the boundary of the Optima building and our parcel, which we have. But those items, as described in Matt's staff report, were simply, can we modify the truck route? And the purpose of that was to ensure that we were driving as far away as possible from the Optima residence. We met with Asher and a few of his board members, who's a resident at the tower and a board member, presented that option to him, at which point at that meeting, there was gratitude for doing that. We also talked with him at the time and with you at the last commission hearing about the hours of delivery. Since we met on the 18th, we've had quite a few conversations internally with our logistics teams, our routing manager, in trying to program this store or this unit to ensure that trucks do not arrive at a particular time in order to ensure that there's tranquility for the residents. The lighting, we have something to present there as well, where we evidence that the hearing on the 18th, that it doesn't violate as originally presented any of the Skokie codes or ordinance, but that we are in fact going to dim further in order to enhance the concerns that came from staff and residents. And then finally, the request to consider some bird mitigation. So starting with the delivery truck route, this graphic, if you're all seeing it, this was our original route. The truck would come down woods, not driving past the Optima building, turn into our property, circumnavigate around the back of the building and out. That southern boundary of the on plan view, as you're looking at it, that's the area that was in concern as it drove past the garage of the Optima Tower. So what we had done since is modified our site plan slightly, and now we are driving as far away as possible from, as we enter the property, from the residence. And as you can see on the bottom of that graphic, the corner of the building is not quite in line with our building itself. So the truck only passes past a very small corner of that tower, back out to the north on the page, and then left out to Woods Roads. That's as far away as we can get that truck from the residence, which is, again, something we presented to the board members and Asher, a member of the community there, which was the feedback we got was that there was gratitude for that. The graphic beyond that is the area in question that we drive on. We always provide heavy duty asphalt. That's because it's a big truck. It can turn asphalt pretty quickly, particularly in areas where there is snow and ice. And the other portion is just a graphic that shows that truck would be at least 93 feet away from the building, the Optima Tower itself. And of course, the first unit is around 42 or so feet in the air. So we are as far as we possibly can be, or that anyone could expect a development to provide from the residents. Again, this one seemed to be a request that came to us from the 18th. Can we look at this? We did. And again, I believe we've made a significant change to our path as we navigate to the site. Second item, as listed, was the delivery hours. This is a pretty simple one. We won't go to the site between 10 p and 7 a. We will only arrive at 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., kind of operating hours for our haulers to arrive when most folks are awake or at work. That's, again, a simple solution that we've considered and we'll provide for this store, which I think made the residents happy about that change. Finally, the lighting. We have our consultants here if there's any further detailing that wants to be discussed, but essentially we are going to dim the building after 11 to 50% of the output of the lights. That's the tower lighting and any of the interior lighting. The parking lot lighting will also get dim, but that'll have a code minimum requirement that staff will dictate to us as how low those lights actually can go. Those aren't in our control. But again, the tower itself will be dimmed significantly from our first presentation on the 18th. And we have some folks that can describe exactly what that means. But essentially the light pollution originally didn't violate any of the codes, and now, of course, clearly will not. Since the 18th, we've also finalized some of the structural design of our building in a tier, even though the overall height didn't get reduced, but a tier was removed. We're using a moment frame construction of steel, so we had a delta in height to height between levels. So there's a whole level of lighting that also would come out of that formula, which reduces the overall lighting for the site. And then finally, bird strike mitigation. And we honestly had to go out to the world to find consultants for us to do this. We've not dealt with this before. Not many folks that we've talked to have dealt with it. We did catch up with the net price directly after the meeting on the 18th. We exchanged cards. We had a conversation with her. She, in fact, recommended Feather Friendly and Paul Grollo to us, of which we struck up a conversation and began to educate ourselves on everything bird mitigation. I'm going to turn it over to Paul at this point, who I think is the best to speak to the process that we took, what we're going to end up with, and what we decided to do here in Skokie. And then I'll get back to finalizing presentation of these 4 items. And again, the 5th, it's not in our presentation, but the 5th came out of the Appearance Commission, which we added. And again, that was a unanimous approval. These 4 are what we're primarily here to talk about. So Paul, please take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Grollo. I'm Vice President of Feather Friendly Technologies, Inc. We're a 15-year business in the bird collision mitigation industry with completed projects all over the world. I was asked to be a committee member of the Canadian Standards Association, which was a development of a bird-friendly standard here in Canada. Toronto was the first city in the world to develop bird-safe guidelines. This CSA standard was more or less launched right across Canada to be adopted by various municipalities as they saw fit. Again, Feather Friendly Technologies, we're a leader in the bird collision deterrent industry. Carvana had reached out to myself as a vendor of bird collision mitigation based on conversations with Annette. Through our conversations, Carvana sought to come up with a practical solution to collision mitigation that worked for their business model. In regards to bird collision mitigation, there's sort of 4 key items that are always considered. One is always first surface exterior application. The idea behind that is it's to break up the surface reflection of the glass or allow the bird to see the deterrent and avoid collision with the glass. Second is spacing. Our product has been tested and approved by ABC, and it's recommended the 1/4 inch markers spaced every 2 inches by 2 inches is your best level of protection. 3 is contrast. It needs to be seen. If we can see it, a bird can see it. Number 4 is height. When it comes to commercial buildings, all projects are very, very unique and need to be viewed this way. A lot of standards that are in place talk about addressing the first 4 to 5 stories or top of the mature tree canopy, whichever is greater. And actually a 5th point we added is that collision mitigation is multifaceted. Building mass, amount of glass, glass treatment, a lighting plan, overall development plan. It's not just one simple solution. Carvana has chosen to apply a horizon pattern, which is basically our 2x4, which is supported by Dr. Daniel Clem's research. And the American Bird Conservancy does have data on that as well. Despite support for the 2x4 rule, the current best practice is the 2x2. And Carvana is aware of the pros and cons and is elected to go ahead with the horizon pattern. And there's a comment there about the solution may not be satisfactory to all parties, but it is an acceptable measure of mitigation. We were contacted a few weeks back and product samples were delivered to Carvana on December 30th. And again, they have assessed the 2x2 and the 4x2 and have shared with me that they would like to proceed with the 4x2 spacing of the horizon pattern. Again, while all projects are unique, when they talk about standards, a lot of it is talking about minimum requirement. And again, that first 4 to 5 stories or top of the mature tree canopy comes into play. Again, Carvana is proposing to apply the horizon marker pattern as noted into the 7th tier 5410 high. So this is Carvana had done a lot of due diligence before they had contacted me and educated themselves as much as possible. One of the things they did is they developed this matrix, and basically it shows minimum guidelines and regulations in place across North America. And as you can see, most of them fall within that range of the 54 feet, other than the most stringent legislation is New York City at 75 feet. Bird strikes above the tree line and above any of these minimum guidelines can happen. However, from my knowledge and from science, they are not as common as strikes in that lower range. And I'll pass it over to Emily for the lighting end of it.
Thanks, Paul. So for those of you who were not at the November 18th meeting where I presented, my name is Emily Klingon-Smith. I'm a partner with Schuler Shook. We're an architectural lighting design firm. I happen to be based in Chicago, although we also have offices, as you can see, in New York, Minneapolis, Dallas, San Francisco, and Melbourne. Our firm was founded in 1986. I've been with the firm for 25 years. And our designers have a very diverse set of backgrounds, from architectural engineering, which was what I studied, to theatrical lighting, architecture, and so forth. And we're very meticulous in how we approach our projects, with analyzing lighting solutions, using the latest software, preparing calculations, and such. Our role for this project has been to come in as a third-party reviewer to review the lighting solutions that have been proposed by another consultant for this project. And as we presented previously, we've looked at some elements such as light trespass and so forth. Tonight, I'm going to talk about lighting as it relates to bird strike mitigation. And to start, I'll share that I'm obviously not an ornithologist. That's not my area of expertise. I'm here as a lighting expert. However, we have done a fair amount of research to look at various guidelines to determine what is currently considered best practice as it relates to lighting and bird strike mitigation. So in doing that, we looked at a variety of guidelines and publications and research journals, such as various Midwest Audubon Society publications, the American Bird Conservancy. We looked at research that's published in journals such as Ecology and Society, Biological Conservation, and others to basically summarize what research has been done to date as it relates to lighting and birds. In short, birds have very complex visual systems. It's not as simple as light or no light. The detailed research that's available today is somewhat limited, and the exact causations are unclear between light and bird behavior. The research today that we are finding is primarily laboratory based, and there are field studies that are at isolated sites such as lighthouses, communication towers, or energy production facilities, which are a bit different from this site. I will note that most birds are primarily active during the daytime, but most migration occurs at night and during the months of mid-March through early June and late August through mid-November. There are resident birds or non-migratory birds, and those, from what we have read, appear to be less affected or are unaffected by artificial light, and they're generally less active at night than migratory birds. Migratory birds, bear with me a minute here, I'm looking at my notes. There are theories that migratory orientation for birds, they use visual cues, they refer to the stars in the horizon, and they have an internal magnetic compass mechanism that helps with their migration. Studies have shown that red wavelengths can disrupt their magnetic compass mechanism more than other parts of the lighting spectrum, other wavelengths, but they do need some low intensity blue wavelengths for the compass mechanism to function properly. We go to the next slide. So in terms of trying to make this applicable to the site and coming up with what we think are best practice mitigation strategies for lighting, the first thing that we have identified is considering the directionality of the lighting fixtures that are at the site, both the site lighting, which is to say the parking lot lighting and bollards and so forth, as well as the lighting within the proposed vending machine tower. The parking lot lighting that's proposed is what's called full cutoff, which means that all of the light is directed downward. There's no light that goes up above the horizontal plane into the sky. And why this is important is that it really limits the potential for birds that are in flight to be able to see those light fixtures and be distracted by them. And then the lighting within the tower is directed such that it is directed inward into the tower. It's not directed straight up or outward through the glazing of the tower. So it's really designed to be as what I'll call contained as possible and really limit any kind of light trespass from the exterior of the building. We go to the next slide. Other mitigation strategies include considering the intensity of the light. As has been discussed, the proposed tower and signage lighting on the west, north, and south facades will be dimmed at 11 p.m. And the parking lot lighting will also be dimmed, which will help with reducing how much light is at the site. We also have the ability to adjust the color of the light. So as mentioned, birds tend to be more sensitive to red wavelengths of light. So this control system for the tower lighting is able to fully adjust the color of the light fixtures within the tower to be able to accommodate whatever is required. And then for timing, the building and site lighting will be dimmed, as mentioned, at 11 p.m. and that's year round, not just during the migratory bird seasons. So for these reasons, we think that the proposed lighting is appropriate to be able to mitigate the potential for bird strikes.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Finally, I'd like to conclude the presentation that I'm going to give with a little bit of context in the area that we're developing, as well as make note that there is no current Skokie code or ordinance for bird mitigation. So we have considered carefully and are conscientious of the concerns that are out there in the community. But it's important to note that the development that we are providing, considering it's a 5-acre site and what could be built there, is quite slight. And so I think not only with our mitigation that no other development in the area currently has, we would be the only building with mitigation that has been recommended in various forms in the area around the park. And yet we're also the smallest footprint building as it relates to potential strike. If you look, for example, at the Optima Tower building, that's over 400,000 square feet of glass and a much larger footprint boundaring the park itself. Next one. You've got the Brand McNally building. It's 31,000 feet of glass just next to us, and that's also going to be redeveloped to probably something bigger. The Peapod and North Shore Medical, 12,000, 6,000 feet of glass. Who knows what happens over time there. Then around the corner, you've got Old Orchard, which is 35,000 feet of glass, and that's mirrored glass next to a pond with trees that has no mitigation again. Another Old Orchard Tower in the area that again has no mitigation, that's 100% glass like ours, but with more reflectivity at 140,000 feet. And then of course the Harmswood office building, same story. What's important to note about ours is what has been referred to in architectural terms as a pencil tower. It's 40 feet wide by 40 feet, and we have 12,000 square feet of glass, arguably the least amount of glass in the neighborhood, considering also the potential for other development that could be there. And this graphic we shared some time ago on the 18th, when you look at our tower on that development pad and what options could be built there, with our mitigation and with what we're building, we would like to argue that this is going to be the safest building along Harmswood. The percentages are there for what's glass and unprotected, and we would be the only protected glass in the neighborhood. Though there's no ordinance, we agree with the concerns that are out there, and we have no objection to what we're offering to put on our facility in order to mitigate bird strikes. But I think it's important to note that it's not just about the Carvana Tower doing nothing. It's also about the fact that this is the slightest development you could probably ask for on this property, and we are providing mitigation. It is I think the most challenging solution out of the 4 items we were asked to go back to the drawing board on. But we do hope that we can garner your support with the knowledge now of what we are doing, as well as the context of the development. So again, we've gone with a horizon pattern. It is a sold pattern by Feather Friendly. It is a pattern recognized by ABC. And again, not a pattern or any pattern recognized in Skokie, but it is a pattern that you can purchase for bird mitigation, and we are more than willing to do that at our cost, which is north of $100,000. Not to suggest that that's our concern, but it's a significant participation that we are willing to make, because I have seen and gotten a lot of emails with concern, but I do think the context matters here. And again, this is the barometer by which we judged all of the data that we got. The tree lines seem to make the most sense. We're not very close to the street, the tree line when you consider how far back our building is set. But it made the most sense to us as it relates to why are these elevations chosen in cities. You can imagine 75 feet, which is I think the only city with this as an ordinance or a code. 75 feet is probably the lower quarter of most of the buildings in New York. They're 300 plus feet, the same as some of these other locations. So 54 feet hits a mullion for us. It's a natural stopping point. It's above the tree line. And it does seem to resolve the concerns of bird mitigation that we've heard without us having to go any further at much greater expense. And again, without ordinance or guidelines provided in the development standards. We do hope that we can continue to favor your support. And Commissioner Luke, with that, I yield back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Berman? Would unmute yourself?
I'm doing it. Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm curious, I got a variety of questions. I'm curious on Illinois Department of Revenue published a letter with recommendations relative to bird mitigation. And it suggested.
Commissioner Berman, you say Illinois Department of Revenue?
I'm sorry, resources, natural resources, forgive me. And that letter was addressed to Carvana. It seemed to imply that Carvana had made some type of filing or sent some information to the DNR for some reason. And I'm not certain what that was. And there's been some confusion about that. Did Carvana solicit their support or send some information?
No, so you file for that application in any land disturbance development. It's a typical process. Every one of those buildings, Optum would have done it. The first letter we actually got back from them said it's a no harm, no issue concern. It's part of the civil permits that you get. It's a state issue, not a jurisdictional issue like in Skokie specifically. But every developer ends up applying for that. It relates to water and other non Skokie related items. In fact, I don't even know if we submitted to Skokie when we submit for our permit. They then updated the letter, noting their concerns. And I do believe that we've responded back to them to suggest that we are going to address their concerns. And I do believe that our bird mitigation concerns are in fact addressing the concerns that they have. It was striking us that the first letter came back with as non-issue. But we have since seen an update, and we believe that this mitigation program should work for them. Again, considering, I'm not sure what letters they provided to all the other buildings in the area, but we will satisfy the state as we get to that part of the process.
And Commissioner Berman, if I may, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources is a separate government agency with their own enforcement mechanism. So the proper process would be to go through the Plan Commission, and then if there were an issue with the IDNR, they would address that issue. So frankly, any conversation or any issues that IDNR has is outside of our jurisdiction. They have their own enforcement mechanism. So they would address that issue if there were an issue. And even if the Plan Commission were to approve it and the IDNR were to hold them up, that's possible, but that's outside of our purview.
So Tyler, what's the process then for IBNR or DNR after this?
It's comparable to the MWRD. Sometimes we approve projects that are bordering the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and it'll be just like that. We approve the project, but then we say, look, we've approved it, but you still have to run it by these other agencies. So in this case, if IDNR has an issue, that would be an issue they'd have to take up after the Plan Commission approval process. And it's possible they would put a stop to it, but they have their own enforcement mechanisms. So the IDNR regulations are not really applicable to our proceedings. It's more of a concern for the states. We have no enforcement power over them.
Okay, and I raise it only because they phrased their letter primarily as recommendations, and they were consistent with ABC to a degree, which raises the issue and agrees that 60 to 75 feet generally is the standard, but and that's American Bird Conservancy. But they raised the point that this is an unusual building in an unusual flight path for birds relative to its proximity to the lake and other nature areas. And and harm's woods, and question whether or not the best practice for that wouldn't be to go higher. So I either ask your expert on from Feather Friendly, or for whoever's looked at that, is how do they judge the recommendation of 54 feet versus what American Birds Conservancy is saying?
Commissioner
Brad, do
Burke,
you-
was that directed at Paul Grollo of Feather Friendly?
Whichever one of your team can best address it.
I think we can have Paul talk to the recommendation, but then again, also talk to, well, he'll describe all of the recommendations that are out there and how they relate. Paul, please.
I think you can, in a situation like this, it's not an existing building. So we don't know exactly how bad of a building it's going to be, if at all. We know where it is in proximity to a nature reserve. We know that glass is a major issue. However, saying that, there's these various legislation in place that talks about, minimum addressing of a building. It's so hard to say, to go higher up in the building, how many more birds are going to be saved by that? It's a hard one. It is a very hard one to discern.
Okay.
I don't know if does that answer your question?
No, I'm not certain it does. But to your point is that nobody really has an answer. So the people, at least within the area that have looked at it, are saying that perhaps it's not adequate at 54 feet. But you raise the interesting point that we settle on 54 feet and we find out that there are significant bird strikes. What's the feeling or the mood within Carvana to correct that situation then, if we are seeing through some of it, which it was either the IDNR or American Bird Conservancy to do reasonable audits periodically, in relative to strikes. If we've determined that there have been significant strikes or it's a problem, what's the appetite for fixing that?
If I may, Commissioner Berman, I guess that question I would ask is, what do we ask the same of the existing buildings along Harm's Woods?
No, but again, most of the organizations that have submitted letters to date that I've read deal with the fact that your building's a little different because the birds can see, the canopy through it. There's the lighting issues. There's what's 100% glass with, minimal supports between the glass panes. And it's true, and also we have to raise, I guess my feeling is that everything evolves over time, right? And a few years ago, none of the cities had it, and everybody's learning because of the significant volume of birds that are dying, millions every year with bird strikes, is that it's got to be dealt with. And so yours is, you're wanting to raise a difficult building because it's completely translucent to the canopy, in a flight path, headed right into a delicate area, not far from the lake, not far from a variety of areas. It's the perfect storm. So unfortunately, yes, we're learning and asking questions relative to a building that is potentially very hazardous. Small, to your point, but very hazardous. And so one of the solutions is that certainly, my mind is, why take the chance and wrap the building all the way up? And, there could still be strikes, but it mitigates it. And also to the lighting, which we haven't even started discussing yet. So I just question is, what do we do if that building that is translucent in a delicate area, that's all glass, is a continued problem when you chose to only go to 54 feet, and the village comes back, because now we do have an ordinance, and says, what are you going to do to fix it?
I don't know what happens in post-ordinance application, but you could argue the same, that if there's no bird strikes, can we remove the dots? The science behind a lot of what we've learned is very complicated to understand 100% of what works, because 100% of coverage is not a foolproof method either. And again, being the only building on that corridor that would have mitigation, and the request for us to consider mitigation we just feel that we are providing mitigation based on the science that we've learned and the canopy heights. And our building is unique. And to your point, and the point I try to make, it's 40 feet wide in a 5-acre parcel with a lot of fly-through area. The buildings next to us, the Optima Tower, is not at all, with a lot higher reflectivity. So whether it's clarity that the birds have a challenge with or reflectivity that the birds have a challenge with, it's all over the place as to what the perfect solution is. We don't think we can get to a perfect solution, but we do believe that what we are offering is a solution that far exceeds the current requirement in Skokie or anywhere in Chicago.
All right, so my next issue is dimming versus turning the lights off, especially during migratory bird season at night. Is how did we come to the conclusion that dimming was adequate versus turning the lights off, which is the recommendation from the, I believe, the DNR, the ABC, and most other of the organizations that have written as a part of this process?
You know, we haven't had a time to work through the DNR recommendations. We've received that letter, and that's in process. I don't know of any other requirements of any of the buildings, whether the residential or office, to turn their lights off to 100%. We just don't want to be penalized outside of the code requirements. And again, we've studied the interior lighting, we've studied the array of lighting, the color of lighting. We do believe that it is not any more or less dangerous than the buildings in and around us. And so we don't want to be the only dark tower out there. And again, we are retail. We are trying to present our wares. The cars that are in that
about the
tower.
other buildings out there, there probably isn't a requirement, but most of them tend to be office buildings or residential. So as a natural recourse of patterns, the lights are going to be off in the majority of the units and those hours anyway.
But not in office buildings. The emergency lighting is required to stay on. I mean, not 100%. We're being asked to turn our building off 100% after 11.
I think in ABC, if I'm not mistaken, I'm getting them all the alphabet soup mixed up, but certainly in one of them was turning all the lights off except for those that are required for safety standards.
Yeah, Commissioner Berman, ABC is not a governing body in Skokie. We're trying to work within the rules of development for the Skokie community. We've read their reports. We are providing mitigation. They're not a body that we can recognize formally in our development process. That's a challenge for us.
Well, but you put forth your own expert, who is not a governing body, as your expert, and yet other organizations that have as much or more experience have submitted their statements, and so it's only fair that they be given weight too, right?
And we have given weight to. In fact, Paul is an advocate of Feather or ABC, and he works closely with them. We have considered all of the recommendations from all of these organizations in our decision. We have not ignored ABC. ABC is, let's call it the hallmark of what you can and should do for bird mitigation strikes. But so we're not ignoring any of those considerations. We've just landed on a consideration that we believe is, adequate and compensatory to the development and the adjacencies to the park and the adjacent developments around us. We really believe it's a fair resolution to a challenge in development standard. There are none.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have no other questions. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Any other commissioners have a question for petitioner? Okay. All right. At this time,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just a couple of clarifications on the applicant's proposal, their presentation.
Yes, Matt, go ahead.
So in the lighting discussion, there was mention of regulating color. So right now, our recommendations don't mention color or speak to it at all. So I wanted to be clear about that. Then also, the lighting expert talked about directional lighting, meaning that different sides of the building might have different standards. Right now, the recommendation doesn't take that into consideration. The recommendation before the commission tonight speaks to all four sides of the entire building, essentially. So I wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Yeah, I know that the parking lights we have control of, and we do regulate them as to how much they can flare out or how much area they have to cover. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to open it up to anybody out there, or actually out to the public for questions and comments. And I believe Mr. Asher, are you out there?
I think we'll let him in right now.
Okay. Actually out to the public for questions and comments. And I believe Mr. Asher, are you out there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
I think we'll let him in right now.
I'm looking for you.
Yeah, he's
Yes,
down
I
there.
see you now. Okay.
Mr. Asher, do you have it playing also in your background, the meeting on your TV or somewhere else?
No, I don't. I have nothing else on.
Okay, there's a little bit of an echo. I'm trying to figure out where it's from.
I believe Mr. Asher, are you out there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Mr. Asher, I believe you wanted to have questions or comments?
I think there's some other people that need to mute themselves.
Mr. Asher, do you have it playing also in your background?
I have nothing playing here.
On your TV or?
Zero. I have nothing else on.
Okay, there's a little bit of an echo. I'm trying to figure out where it's from.
The only thing I can think of, you know what I'll do is I'll turn off the, hold on. Can you hear me?
We're good.
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, the problem was that I was watching your YouTube channel and that's what was producing the echo. I apologize.
Okay, Mr. Asher.
Can I share my screen if necessary?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. First of all, my name is Asher Bronfeld. Many of the commissioners probably remember me. I went on for about 30 minutes at the November 18th meeting. I'm the president of the Maple Building, the largest building in the Optima complex. And I've sort of acted as a liaison between our boards and your staff in dealing with the Carvana proposal and the petitioner's issues. I'd like to first talk about where I believe we've come to some kinds of agreement, as Brett mentioned, the rerouted traffic pattern for the trucks outside of taking that 5-acre property and putting it on Mars. I believe that's the most efficient way that helps us in terms of both the truck vibration and the truck traffic. It's as far away as possible, given the confines and dimensions of that property line, and we appreciate their efforts in that area. I would like to add, however, that in our rush to get these conditions done, and Matt can back me up on this, you know, that you've had a lot of staff that's been ill, et cetera, et cetera. We only finalized the conditions that were submitted. That's why many of the commissioners didn't get to see it until today. There was an omission, and Matt suggested that I bring up that omission. If I may share my screen. This relates to the commitment that Carvana made back on November 10th to turn off their trucks when they do make deliveries and pickups. If I can refer you to their commitment, I don't want you to just take my word for it. Give me 1 second. Can you folks see that? Hello?
We can see it.
Oh, good.
Yes,
good.
I can see it.
This was a memorandum that was sent from Brett Hanlon to myself, representing Optima, second page talked about various types of truck concerns. And I would ask, and Matt suggested that I do this, as that we add this either onto the fourth condition or maybe make it another condition entirely as it relates to the truck engines being turned off. It's not my language, this is Carvana's language. I would suggest that this be added as an amendment to the other conditions. And I'll just read it for the record. Truck engines will be off during loading and unloading of vehicles, which will occur in a gated area in the back of the building, east end of the site. The unloading and loading of vehicles would occur 3 to 6 times per day during operating hours. We feel that that was promised to us, and because of the rush, because of the staffing issues that you're experiencing, like we're all experiencing, it was just left off, but it had been agreed to previously. We'd asked that that amendment be added before you take your vote. Okay. All right. With regards to the lighting, I put it in the chat area, and I simply want to say I'm a little bit more confused than I was going into tonight's session. I hope Matt can clear this up in terms of the language now seems to supersede the previous language, which was having only 2 directions, having their lights dimmed. This language seems to have all the lights as it's written. Again, I got confused because of Emily's presentation with regards to the lighting. It seems to be dimming all 4 sides by 50% after 11 p.m. I just want to make sure that I can't address the Carvana people, but if you guys could clarify that possibly before you take the vote, I would appreciate it. I think our residents would appreciate it because we're trying to figure out what exactly the condition is as of now. All right.
Would you clarify that, please, again, Mr. Asher?
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, and I put it in the chat comments, when I was listening to Emily's presentation about the lighting, she specifically said, relating to, we were talking about lighting being turned off. She's talking about west, north, and south, 3 sides. And in your description, in the language of the condition, it makes it sound like all sides are turned off. I'm just trying to get clarification. I can understand why the east side would be interesting to Carvana to keep on because they want to project towards the expressway, but I'm not sure, and I don't want this to be an issue 3 weeks from now if we're discussing it again. I'd like some clarification.
If I may, Asher, you're correct. And per our conversation when we met, yes, we would prefer, and staff had agreed in the past that we would prefer the east side, which is the freeway facing side, to remain not reduced. That we run them at 80%, not 100, but at the 3 sides that matter most, your building, the park.
I'm fine as long as I understand it. It's just that the language doesn't say that. And I'm not being a lawyer here. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I just want some clarification before we go any further on a vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the recommendation as it stands is for all 4 sides. It doesn't speak to east or any other. It dims 50% and replaces the previous condition, which spoke to the different sides of the building. So right now, as it stands, it's all 4 sides.
Well, this would be voluntary on Carvana's part, correct?
Right.
It would be a minimum standard.
That would be
that's our minimum standard. But if they want to comply with Mr. Asher's wishes, that'd be voluntary.
It's not my wish. That's kind of what we've agreed to. I mean, that was the whole point of going back and forth.
Okay. Yeah, well, we're not going to make it a condition as long as you 2 have an agreement.
Okay, so Matt, I would like to correct the record though, that with the east side would remain and that 3 sides are dimmed.
Yeah, that's exactly why I would like to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
Because right now it doesn't speak to any side.
Okay, let's clarify that
if you want to,
excluding the east side.
If you want to add that, then that would have to be, because this will replace the condition that addressed the lighting in the previous version.
Okay.
So if you want, you know, you have to request that
I would like to
Oh.
request that perhaps it could come up in a motion.
for the east side to remain.
That's right.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's fine. Like I said, I'm just trying to get it clear and I'm not working for Carvana. I want to make sure we know what we're voting on. Or should I say that you, the commissioners, are voting on. I have nothing else to add outside of that amendment that I just described. Hopefully someone will add that language before the vote is taken to include the thing relating to the truck unloading, that the engines are turned off. I was a little confused about the heavy duty asphalt. It was pointed out to me earlier today that it is part of the site plan. I just couldn't see it. My eyes aren't the best, but it's obvious that that was included in the revised site plan. So I'm good with that. I'm not commenting on anything else as it relates to the plans in general. I just wanted to limit my comments to the 4 conditions and with the addition of that language. So I'm done, and I appreciate your time, and I know it's been tough the last couple of weeks in terms of the staff, and I really appreciate the staff's efforts. Thank you very much.
all right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Who's out there?
Alex is going to be letting in people one by one, so. maybe we
Okay,
can- although actually, maybe
I believe
Annette's out there.
who's the spokesperson for the bird group? Is that Annette? Annette. Is she out there?
I'll let her in now.
Yes, please.
I think she also has 2 other individuals that are testifying with her. We might want to clarify that.
Okay. Annette, are you with us?
She's connecting the audio right now.
Okay. Annette, can you hear us?
We just need to unmute her. Or Annette, can you unmute yourself?
Annette, can you unmute yourself, please? Can you hear us? Alex, have we got her?
She's just
Oh, there
unmuted.
she is. Okay. Good evening,
Okay,
Annette.
I'm sorry. I had a window open and my mute would not come off. I'm here now. Thank you. Can you
Okay.
hear me now?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hi, great.
Will we have your full name for the record, please?
Sure. My name is, again, I'm trying to start the video. There we go. Here we go. My name is Annette Prince. I am the Director of Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, conservation project working in Chicago for almost 20 years for the protection and mitigation of birds that are being injured at the urban lighting and glass environments that we are surrounded
All
by.
right, thank you. May I remind you to please direct your comments and questions to the commission? Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, I'm here to discuss what I feel is the value of what's been offered for mitigation. And we really feel that what has been identified for possible mitigation efforts are woefully inadequate. We feel that these are not going to provide the highest level of protection. As has been discussed before, this is a very fragile, important area. It's not just a preserve, it's a protected preserve. We're talking about putting a building that is all glass, that is lit from the inside, and that is going to be in what's a migratory path. It's a chain of green spaces that goes from Chicago has been ranked the city with the highest risk potential because of the billions of birds that come this way. And our work that we have done downtown in Chicago and surrounding areas have recovered tens of thousands of birds. So we know that we are in the path of an incredible amount of potential danger for birds. When the issue was raised about that if other bills don't have Carvana should not have to do it, that does not seem to be the look at an issue. If the idea that if I only kill 2 people a week and my neighbors are killing 20, it's okay that I'm killing 2 people at my house every week. That really just doesn't stand to me as an argument that is convincing. And the fact that the Carvana Tower has added dangers in that it's a clear cube. It's going to have light, any light, even if you say you're pointing it inward, when you're inside of a glass box, the light comes out everywhere. And any light that goes inward bounces off the cars or whatever's on the inside, so light goes back out. We have seen these examples in other buildings. We have the Apple building in downtown Chicago, which sits next to the lake and the Chicago River. Once again, an important natural area that is a huge attraction for birds, and millions of birds visit these areas. And it is lit all night, and it is a transparent cube, and birds, we pick up hundreds of birds at that single building alone. So we have examples of how deadly a building like this can be. We have another building in Downers Grove. It's an Aetna building it's a 13-story building about the same height as the tower that Carvana is proposing. And it sits a few hundred yards away from Lyman Forest Preserve. It's very similar to the Harmswood Preserve. And even the limited monitoring that we are able to do at this building has produced hundreds of dead and injured birds. Saying that the tower is a small footprint does not really address the issue of its danger. You can put a single pane of glass and see hundreds of birds hit that single pane of glass. It doesn't have to be the world's biggest piece of glass. It doesn't, the size of the footprint does not diminish the hazard that the building is going to present. As far as the height of the building and how far that we feel that the glass coverage should be the entire height of the building, by virtue of the fact that people in ordinances that were quoted in the presentation say that, well, most people shoot for 50, 60 feet high. That's for a general building in a general area, not one that is going to be illuminated all night, not one that is next to a fragile and protected forest preserve and in a migratory pathway. So there are conditions that go beyond the threat value is enhanced, and we feel that the bird mitigation needs to be enhanced. And the idea of a tree line being 60 feet in a letter, and perhaps the presentation that ABC is going to make is going to say that really you take 60 feet for the tree line, and birds coming in and out of that tree line are flying up. Their best recommendation is to take the height of your tree canopy and double it. So if your tree canopy is 60 feet, birds coming in, flying from their upper levels of migration, birds rising above harm's woods and moving on to their next destination are going to be at those 100-foot levels, which is why we are asking for certainly the whole building. We also spoke at the original meeting with the commissioners about doing a calculation for the U.S. Green Buildings LEED certification to be considered bird safe. And we have someone who's going to speak to this about how when we did calculations for the Carvana building tower, because it has so much glass, it needs to rank in order to reach that certification level of being an effective reducer of bird strikes. It has to have a number of 20, which is an input of all the building materials, the amount of glass, notwithstanding, not even talking about the fact that there's a preserve there and there's lighting. Just the materials alone with Carvana do not meet that threshold of being under 20 unless the whole building is done. Anything less than that can produce a number that we're going to have someone talk and address that issue. As far as the lighting, the statement was made that it's not as simple as light, no light. Well, certainly the studies at McCormick Place are a definitive research done by 30 years of work at another building that's glass and light and sitting on Lake Michigan in the path of a migratory route that has documented tens of thousands of birds hitting the McCormick Place building. And a study was done by the Field Museum and Dave Willard, in which half of they compared nights when the lights were off at the building and nights when lights were on at the building. And they could see an 80% reduction in the number of strikes that happen with complete light reduction. Any other lighting that's left on is providing a source of attraction, an ability to see through the building and be attracted to the vegetation around it and on the other side of it. So, we really don't believe that we don't have research that shows that light reduction is important, not light reduction, light extinguishing. And we believe that those times of light extinguishing need to be in the spring and fall migration seasons from midnight to 7 o'clock in the morning. We have looked, and ABC has documented that the car traffic on the expressway between midnight and 7 o'clock in the morning is minimal. So we feel that this makes no impact on the marketing value of having the tower lit, the tower not having its lights on from midnight to 7. It allows the tower to have its lights on throughout the rush hour in the evening. And once you get to midnight and move on to 7 in the morning, there is negligible traffic on that road that would cause Carvana to lose any of its marketing value to show their cars off at those hours. So essentially, I want to let other people talk, but I really want to say that we're trying to appeal to the village to make this a win for everyone. We feel it is not that hard for Carvana to do more, to offer more, to be able to put the markers on the entire building, to be able to turn lights out during those non-essential hours of migration. And we also ask for the additional provision that there will be monitoring to show that the mitigation efforts that are adopted are effective. And if this higher level of standard, which we really owe to the birds, we feel that the tower should not be built, and that if the mitigation is appropriate and effective and at the highest level possible, we would think that if Carvana is going to do something to be proud of, they should make a full effort, not a partial attempt at this. And in the end, it'll be a win-win-win situation for the village as being a steward of the environment, for the citizens and the visitors to Skokie who value the natural space that's there and want to see it protected. Carvana ends up being a green corporate partner, and the birds and the people who value them and see their protection is something that benefits all of us as being critical to a sustainable and healthy environment. There is the potential here to make everyone a winner in this proposition, and we hope that the village will want to make requirements that hold Carvana to a higher standard by the virtue of the valuable birds and habitat that exist at this particular site.
Okay. Did you have anyone else in your group that
Yes,
wishes to
we've got
speak?
Brian Lenz from ABC would be next.
Okay.
And then Claire Halpin would be our third person. We have 3 people presenting. So Brian, is Brian there? Brian Lenz.
I'm admitting him now.
Thank you.
Brian? Is he?
There he is.
Hello. Just muting and unmuting various things so I don't give you guys an echo. My name is Brian Lenz. I am the Glass Collisions Program Manager for American Bird Conservancy. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. and the Plains, Virginia, but I actually live 30 minutes north of Milwaukee, so I'm pretty close to you guys. I'd like to start by just saying thank you to everyone for taking this issue of bird collision seriously. I don't need to go into the numbers. You've done that before. But I appreciate the conversation and the willingness to talk about this. Just add a couple. Yeah, I'm here to add a couple things and answer questions if anybody has any. ABC has a model ordinance for places that adopt ordinances, which recommends that glass be bird friendly up to 100 feet above grade. Ordinances are a balance of a lot of things, which is why a number of those are shorter than that. You know, if you want something to apply to every building, you might have to ask for a little bit less on each individual building. A lot of those ordinances were also adopted before we had really good data on just how high up bird collisions likely go. Birds definitely hit buildings higher than 100 feet. We have documented, excuse me, documented cases of that, including in Chicago and in New York City across from Central Park, which are kind of another green space like what we're talking about here. But, you know, we try and balance going higher up with, again, including as many buildings as you can. The important thing is the height of the vegetation. And as Annette mentioned, you know, a lot of places have said, well, it's the height of the vegetation, period. Birds spend most of their time in and around vegetation. So if you look at the height of the mature canopy, birds fly between those, but they don't just fly between them, they fly above them, especially if they have to move a little bit of a distance between trees. So we think that, you know, addressing another 50 or 100% over the tree canopy height is really kind of what the target should be for, you know, a best practice if you really want to go all the way and do it as much as you can. So for a 60-foot tree canopy, that would be going to 90 to 120 feet. Again, you'll notice that's not what we ask for because, you know, there's give and take in all of these. As far as lighting, it's really complex. I could give you a talk for an hour on lighting, but I won't do that. One thing we do know, though, is that shutting the lights off from outside and ones that are visible from the inside can make a difference in the early morning hours during migration. Lights for safety are always okay. Birds are important, but we don't want, you know, people are more important. Don't get mad at me for saying that, bird people. So for this location, you know, midnight to 7 a.m. during spring migration, April 1st to June 1st, and fall migration, August 1st to November 1st would probably be sufficient. I say 7 a.m. because the goal is to have the lights off until sunrise. Birds flying overnight start to drop out after midnight, which means they land from their migration flights. And it appears that the effective lighting is most significant when birds are coming down off of those migration flights. And birds tend to stop migrating by the time the sun is up. So if you have, you know, a sunrise, or if it's dark until 6:45 in the morning and you have the lights come on at 6, you're potentially having the lights come on for the worst 45 minutes of the night. Again, there's a lot of, you know, it's tough to study this, so it's hard to say for sure, but that appears to be the pattern from a number of different studies. If you consider that this is 7 hours a day over 5 months of the year that the lights would be off, if you go with 12 hours of darkness, that's 24.5% of the nighttime hours that the lights would be off. So it's not, you know, it's less than a quarter. And Annette mentioned the traffic patterns there. Traffic doesn't really pick up in that area until 7 a.m. based on the website I saw and included in my letter. And the bulk of the traffic and rush hour is in the afternoon and evening, and the lights could be on that whole time. You might even consider extending the time on the weekends till 1 or 2 in the morning when you turn them off. Again, as a recognition, people are out moving around. There might be a little more traffic at those times. I worked with the Milwaukee Bucks on Fiserv Forum, and we put in a weekend exemption for them like that. Because, you know, we realize this is intended to cut a good profile and be advertising for Carvana as well. So I will keep it short and leave it there and say thank you for allowing me a chance to speak. And again, thank you for considering collisions in birds and working to save birds' lives. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lenz. Is there anyone else in your group?
Wait, yes, Claire Halpin.
Okay, Claire?
Claire, yes.
She's being admitted.
Okay.
You got, okay, good. Claire is a person, is a member of the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, the Chicago Ornithological Society, and an architect who has worked with the Studio Gang architecture firm and has done a number of projects dealing with bird safe buildings.
Okay.
Claire, sorry.
Good evening. Claire, could you give us your name for the record?
Hi, yes, my name is Claire Halpin. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, I do.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I don't mean to intrude. We were trying to have all three of the witnesses testify within 10 minutes, so we're already at 15 minutes. So Claire, if you wouldn't mind just trying to be a little bit more sensitive with the time, because there's a lot of people that want to testify tonight. Okay.
Certainly. All right, I'll get started then. Thanks. So I am an architect in Chicago, and I think I just caught the tail end as I was switching from YouTube to here. I've worked with the Bird Friendly Chicago group. I was previously an architect with Studio Gang. I'm not there anymore, but during that time worked on a lot of bird friendly buildings. And so I've been looking at this issue for well over 10, almost 15 years. And Annette asked me to look at when this building came up, and I guess back in November when it first went in front of the commission, just to look at it in terms of the LEED calculation for what is a bird safe building. And so just to explain that very quickly, the LEED calculation kind of takes a building in a vacuum and just at least kind of takes the area, what's solid, what's glass, and then what the parts that are glass, how transparent is it, and what are the areas that are more of a hazard than another, and it sort of makes this big overall building calculation. And that's based on, again, all of the materials that make up that, the surface area of the building, and their individual sort of values of bird threat. So a lower number is better. A lower number means a lower threat, and a higher number means a higher threat. One other thing that I wanted to just point out about the LEED calculation, and I noticed that in one of the graphics presented earlier, they do have that 36-foot height, but that's only zone 1. So the LEED calculation divides the building up into 2 zones. There's below 36 feet, and then you also have to consider the area above 36 feet. And if this building were actually going for that LEED credit for bird safe buildings, which I don't think it is, and we were just using it as a metric to kind of understand the level of threat. If it were, though, the LEED credit does require any what's called fly-through conditions, so glass corners or glass walkways, or like this building, it's kind of the whole building because it's all glass. All of the glass, whether it's in that lower 36 feet or above, to have sort of a threat value of 25 or less. And so just to put those numbers into perspective a little bit, there's a material value, and then there's an overall building calculation. And LEED, when you do that building calculation, you calculate all the area and the materials. For it to be considered bird safe, it should be 15 or less. And so we took the drawings that were provided online and kind of measured off of them. So I won't say it's incredibly accurate, but it's close enough to get a good idea. We sort of did a calculation based on whether the building would have no bird safe glass. So whether,
what are your findings then?
Sure. So we did the calculation if all of the glass were used safe feather friendly. The number that we came up with was about 17, which is really close to LEED, which we think is pretty good if the entire building glass were treated. I just did the calculation again, just based on takeoffs at 54 feet with that 2x4 material, and it goes up to 42 as an overall building calculation. Just for a thought experiment, doing the calculation also considering every surface on the building, even the solid surfaces. So at the base, there are some solid walls. Say it was all glass, that number would be 72. So if you consider lead bird safe is 15. Take all the glass in Carvana and put feather friendly on it would be about 17, pretty good. The current proposal is around 42, and not doing anything would be 72. So we're a lot closer to 72 than we feel comfortable with, I think.
Okay, very good. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Who else is out there? Alex, that are
Mr.
on your
Chairman,
list?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I request a 5-minute break?
Sure, absolutely.
Please.
Yes.
It has been almost a couple hours.
Okay. We'll pick this up at, let's say
20 after.
20 after.
Don't close out though. Yeah.
Don't close out.
Yeah, you can turn off your video if you need to.
Yeah, turn off your video if you're gonna take a break. Okay, is everybody back from our little break? Hello. I
Yes.
see everybody setting back on. Good. Okay. I'll see. I see a few people.
The commission is here. Tyler's here. Your video is off, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman? Oh, I don't have my video on.
Paul, you're muted.
Ah,
Okay.
ah,
Welcome back, everybody. Hope everybody's refreshed. Let's see. Alex, we have people in the waiting room coming in to talk.
Yes, I'll start admitting them one by one here.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman, Donna Pugh here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Donna.
Okay, I just want to let you know while we were on the break, we see the point and we have a very simple clarifying little phrase to exempt the east elevation for the lighting condition, and we're going to be emailing that to Matt and Tyler. So I just wanted you to know that that was in progress.
And if Matt just wants,
Tyler, let me know that.
sure. And then eventually, if Matt just wants to orally amend the condition on the record,
Yeah.
we can then vote on that issue later on.
Thank you.
Tyler, I think I'm going to add it to my report and bring it up when the voting starts.
Okay.
Thank you. Now we
The individual is connecting to audio. I'll let someone else in while we wait.
okay.
I think we have Kimberly here, Paul, to give comment.
Okay, Kimberly.
Right.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Am I muted?
I don't see you yet. Oh, hi, Kimberly. Would you give us your name for the record, please?
Sure. It's Kimberly Polka. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if you would, would you make your comments kind of brief and, relevant to the point at hand?
I'll do my best. I
Thank you.
am a Skokie resident, kind of, sort of lifetime, lived here, moved away, came back. And in the neighborhood, everyone comes to me when there's an injured animal. So I have a house and I'm running to different rescues, none of which are conveniently located. And I have seen firsthand, working in buildings downtown in a previous life, bird collisions with taller buildings with glass, and do know that it's an issue, and it concerns me being a Skokie resident. I do have to say that it was upsetting to hear what all the other buildings are not doing. And I have to tell you, if I was living here when Optima was proposed or any of the other glass buildings close to Harm's Woods, I would have been on the same call, or actually, we didn't have a pandemic then. I would have been in a meeting in person, but we can't go backwards. And sometimes doing the minimal is not enough. I liked the person who said that this can be a win for everybody. This can be a win for Skokie. This can be a win for Carvana. It can show that we actually care about other living beings to do our very best instead of the very least. I do wish that Skokie had ordinances, but I do think at minimum, the entire building should be covered in bird safe glass. I think that my words were stolen. I really was thinking woefully insufficient myself. But I think that 50 feet is woefully insufficient. I have seen personally bird strikes that happen higher. I sent a letter today saying that I wished I could send pictures of dead birds that I've actually taken to the Field Museum. This is a real issue. And if it wasn't so close to the woods, it would be a different thing. If it wasn't such a small building that you could completely see through, that was lit from the inside, this would be a different situation. I do like the person who brought up that in residential places like Optima or an office tower, many of the lights go out. I worked in 2 different buildings in downtown 10, 15 years ago. I left working downtown 2012, somebody else do the math, but in 2 different buildings who did turn their lights off during migration, except for emergency lights. If a downtown building can do it, Carvana can do it during migration season. And it would be nice to see the building be monitored. Somebody had asked me on social media when I had brought this up, Nextdoor actually specifically brought up Optima and said, does anybody walk around Optima? And I said, I don't know if anybody walks around Optima, but we can only set what we're going to do for our environment and for the birds going forward. We can't move backwards. And I'm sorry, Asher, I'm not meaning to beat up your building. But we can only look forward. And this is a new building that doesn't exist. We should be doing our very best because billions of birds are migrating. Millions are dying every year. We are losing our bird population.
Okay, I agree with you. Very good. Okay. Thank you for comments. We're going to move on to the next speaker. And who is that, Alex?
Next is Lynn Freeman. And they're being admitted now.
Okay.
Said what we're going to do for our environment and for the birds going forward. We can't move backwards. And I'm sorry, Asher, I'm not meaning to beat up your building. But we can only look forward. And this is a
Lynn, you probably have the stream playing on YouTube or your TV.
Yeah.
If you could mute that and then come back to us because we're getting a big echo.
Lynn, are you with us? Can you hear us?
I muted her while it was.
Okay. Well, why don't we come back to her? Who's next?
They might have fixed it now. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello? Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So it says Lynn Freeman. Lynn's my wife.
Okay, very good. Can we have her name?
Joby Bernstein. And I'm a resident, a 14-year
Okay.
resident of the Optima Residential Complex. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to have a few minutes with you. Others have made valid points, and Carvana and everybody, I think, is really using good faith to address these issues, particularly the safety of birds, been highlighted by Annette, Chicago Audubon Society, as well as the other issue, which when this was voted to be passed 5-2, the conditions about addressing bird safety, but also about car safety. So just basically playing off one of the comments, somebody said that, well, birds are important, people are also important. I'd like to address a few comments about people and the impact of this project on people. So I'd appreciate if you'd indulge me if I go outside of the scope of the.
Well, if you start to go outside, we'll try and rein you in.
Good, very good. Okay. So I share all of these concerns, the concerns of the footprint, of the lighting, and the signage. But I'd like to just focus on three other aspects of this project that may not have received as much attention, and that I think many others feel strongly about. One is the proximity of the structure and the operations to the Optima residential complex. By Carvana's own admission, I think everybody is aware of this, the Carvana tower structure is to be roughly within, at the closest point, about 190 feet.
You know,
of the Optima
sir,
residential
I
building.
hate to interrupt you, but you're kind of out of the boundaries of the area that we're discussing tonight.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to be done in 2 minutes. So if you'd please allow me to finish, I would really appreciate
because
it. Okay.
You're not relevant to the points at hand.
Well,
So
I think it would
ask
be
you to-
relevant. I think it would be relevant to the people of Skokie. I was born and raised in Skokie, and I think given that I've been on here for about an hour waiting, kindly extend the courtesy of allowing me to finish.
You have
Okay?
You
Thank
have
you
2
very much.
minutes. You have 2 minutes.
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
Okay. There's no other city in the country, to my knowledge, among the 30 or so in which Carvana has a car tower, in which they've been allowed to put the car towers so close to such a large, densely populated residential building. Second point, environmental dangers due to, aside from birds, particulate air pollution from the car carrier transport vehicles poses a threat to residents as well as the public. And Harms Woods, a designated nature preserve, and its wildlife will also be negatively affected. I think it is well known, this type of particulate matter emissions pollution from car carrying trailer trucks that Carvana is going to need are dangerous and unhealthy to breathe. As a result, the residents, as well as those who use Woods Drive, will be exposed to dirty, unhealthy air. My third point.
Okay.
Carvana and their operations present underestimated risks regarding logistical, traffic, and that's why I believe it's unsuitable and inappropriate. Woods Drive for 30 or 40 years has been limited to car traffic and light duty truck traffic only. I think maybe that could be why for over 30 years, they've never been allowed. Other big rig trucks have never been allowed on Woods Drive or anywhere in the office district. As someone who grew up here in Skokie, okay, given the obvious challenge and scope of the negative impact of this project, they shouldn't be allowed to operate on Woods Drive, big rig trucks.
All right,
So
sir,
if you can get-
your time is
if-
up.
If
I'm sorry,
Carvana
your
can
time is
get
up.
their cars in
Thank you
the
very
building
much.
without using Woods Drive, then I will not continue to strongly oppose this project. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I do believe Carvana did agree to come to this proceeding as voluntarily with the understanding that we would address the 4 points and only the 4 points.
Yes.
I really would ask that we stay to that agreement.
I will try to pull these people in. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that.
Mhm.
Alex?
Okay, next. Sorry.
No, I was just going to let the commissioners know that we have 6 citizens in the waiting room.
Okay,
One is another Lynn Freeman. It could be an accidental duplicate. Would you like me to try letting them in, or?
No.
well, yeah, let's see what the, yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to object to what the attorney just said. This was remanded by the village, and it's unfair. I mean, our
I'm sorry,
Carvana.
who, first of all, who's speaking?
Oh, good. You know what?
Israel Ebert. I'm going to be cross-examining the witnesses too. Let me,
Yeah,
I can
all
start my video. But I would say that it's unfair to silence participants. Carvana has been afforded significant amount of time.
No, sir,
They've had the benefit.
You'll have your time.
So I'm just
please.
raising my objection.
No,
for the
no,
record.
you'll have your
No,
time.
but this is separate from the cross-examine. I'm raising my objection for the
No,
record.
this is,
Allow.
you'll have your time. Thank you.
And
Alex,
Mr. Ebert,
anybody
just
else?
so you're aware, sorry not to cut you off, Paul, but Mr. Ebert, just so you're aware, you're not going to be limited to those 4 points when you begin your cross-examination, just so you know.
Okay, Alex,
The second Mr. Freeman account was added. I don't know, are there 2 speakers?
do you have another name?
Sure. Robert Cussel
Okay,
being added.
Robert, how are you? Unmute yourself.
Got it. Chairman Luke, members of the commission, good evening. My name is Bob Cusel. I'm a 30-year Skokie resident, and we chose to raise our children here. Never regretted that for a moment. Please bear in mind that the scores you heard from Claire, the architect earlier, didn't factor the sensitivity of the Harmswood location, nor the heavily traveled migratory flyways that multiply that threat factor she referred to. Moving on, I'll quote an excerpt from Dave Willard, and I'll make this as fast as I can. Ornithologist and scientist at the Field Museum, he said, "The Carvana plan for an all-glass building that's lit all night and situated near a nature preserve is a recipe for bird disaster." I never heard Mr. Grollo, the consultant from Feather Friendly, say that the Carvana bird mitigation proposal would prevent massive bird strikes. I never heard that. I believe that's perhaps the best argument for insisting on bird-safe treatment for the entirety of the glass and lights out during the migratory seasons. Carvana selected an extremely sensitive location, second only to the Chicago lakefront, with regard to the dense migration traffic. Birds come down from the sky after flying all night, seeking shelter and sustenance before rejoining the migration. The migrating birds include young ones experiencing city lights for the first time. Simply put, and wrapping up, a building that rates as a significant threat in a highly sensitive area, even before factoring in the specific environmental factors and night lighting, requires a very high level of protection. This is common sense. Average threat equals average mitigation. Elevated threat levels call for elevated protection. Some 200 letters echo our concerns from Skokie residents and concerned people outside our boundaries. So do the experts that we cite. You have the evidence before you. Please reject the Carvana bird strike mitigation plan as insufficient. Insist on the high level of protection our experts called for, something we can all be proud of as citizens of Skokie. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Kusel. Alex?
Next, Roberto Levy.
Hello, Roberto? Mr. Levy? Okay. Roberto Levy? Can you hear us?
Currently connecting to audio. While we wait, I can add another. Next is Ruth Hackman. Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
Disconnected.
Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir. Yes.
Okay, I see that you cannot see me. Okay.
Would you give us your name for the record, please?
Yes, I am Dr. Roberto Levy. I'm an MD. And I spoke several times at the meetings before regarding the lighting of Carvana, regarding blue light. And at request of the mayor, George Van Dusen, and the Mr. Matt Brandmeier, I sent scientific articles regarding the effect of blue light on the health of the population. And first of all, I didn't get any answer. They told me they were going to answer. They didn't. I asked those papers to put in the meetings, in the records. I don't know if they were or not. But the fact is that the blue light affects the circadian rhythm in animals and humans, and also in the vegetation. Nobody is paying attention to that. There is no one word about this. But blue light affects the health of the individuals. The circadian rhythm starts at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. By 9 o'clock, the organism starts secreting melatonin. It's interfered by light, by blue light, after 6 p.m. and essentially after 9. You are planning to put this light until 9 p.m. I'm sorry, until 11 p.m. And this is affecting individuals that their diabetes, their circulatory system, etc., all the organism. Nobody pay attention to that. And I spoke several times about that.
Mr. Levy, we did have testimony tonight from one of the lighting engineers, and she did bring up the issue of blue light and red light. And so I believe that the issue is well known.
Yeah, but it's not address the problem with the circadian rhythm, which is affecting the tenants and the owners of the building next to them. Second, they are talking about diminishing the light. There is no probably regulation regarding that, because usually the regulation go behind always to science, very much behind. And I present papers regarding that. What is your commentary regarding that?
I appreciate your concern, and if you can submit your scientific papers to us, we can look at them. But until then, there's, okay, we're good. We're good. All right. Well, thank you very much for your comments tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that Mr. Levy's comments.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Alex, who do we have out there?
Next is a Ruth Hechtman, and she's being admitted now.
Okay. Ruth? Okay.
Mr. Levy's. Okay, very good. Yeah.
Hello, good evening.
Ruth, we're going to need you to turn off either the YouTube you're watching or the TV that also is live streaming it, because we're hearing an echo. And then once you do that, unmute your mic. I'll ask you to do that now.
Okay, unmute yourself, please. You're still muted.
Should be in the bottom left corner.
I've got it.
There you go. Hi, good evening. Would you give us your full name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Ruth Heckman, and I'm a resident of Optima Old Orchard Woods, the Maple Tower. I want to commend the Village of Skokie and its past trustees and commissioners for permitting the construction of the Illinois Holocaust Museum and later the Optima Old Orchard Woods Complex on Woods Drive. This is one of the most beautiful and interesting streets in all of Skokie. You, the current commissioners, are now faced with another construction decision for Woods Drive, that being the Carvana dealership and tower. I cannot seem to picture a car dealership in the same area as the existing buildings and the forest preserve.
Okay.
This seems
Ms. Heckman, I hate that, I don't interrupt your dissertation, but we're trying to limit your comments to the 4 points at hand that we discussed tonight.
This also involves the preservation of the forest preserve. So may I have my 3 minutes and I'll get through real quick. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I cannot seem to picture the car dealership, especially with the forest preserve. This seems to be such a terrible waste of such a beautiful property. I realize the vacant land will be eventually sold, but perhaps for a more suitable purpose. Consider a place where people could reside or visitors could enjoy the character of Woods Drive and our forest preserve. If you take a ride north on Eden's Expressway, you will see a plethora of car dealerships which fit into the business atmosphere of this.
I'm sorry, Ms. You're straying from the points at hand tonight, and I appreciate concerns. And believe me, your comments have been echoed in the past, and they're on record. And actually tonight you are also on record with your comments. Okay, thank you very much.
Next, we have Sheila being admitted now.
Okay, I see she's connecting.
While she connects, I will let in Toby.
Okay. Toby?
Both are still
Or
connected
Sheila?
to audio. These are also our last two speakers.
Okay.
Minus Mr. Hibbert.
I think Toby already spoke. Wasn't he the one with Lynn?
Was he? Okay. All right. Sheila, are you out there? Is Sheila connected?
They're both still connecting.
Okay.
It appears Sheila left. So that would conclude the comments minus Mr. Hibbert. Would you like me to bring him in?
Unless
are we finished then?
Unless Carvana, wishes to rebut the citizen comments or has any comments in regard to that.
Yeah, we won't be ready for Mr. Hibbert yet.
Okay, I'll defer, but I don't think, Brett Sassenberg, you feel it's necessary, correct, at this stage?
You're muted, Brett.
So yes, on Planning Commission and Chair, I just recap. I think that there seemed to be acknowledgement that we've moved the route. The hours of operation seem to be satisfactory. There seems to be some for lighting. As it relates to birds, I would like to make it known that ABC has ordinances or recommendations of 100 feet, but I don't know of any community that actually has adopted that. That I could be wrong. So we are dealing in the best case scenarios for folks most passionate, and I can appreciate that. But we're trying to deal with development standards, and so I do ask that you weight their concerns or comments with what we are doing, which is, whether you rate it 42 or 17 or 72, it's not nothing. And I don't know that anyone has adopted those plans in Skokie. I know for sure hasn't. So that's all I would supplement. I think another quick comment is there's a continued conversation about migratory path to woods, or excuse me, to Harm's Woods. Actually, the entire region is the migratory path. It's not, I don't want the illusion to be that the path is to Harm's Woods. Not that I don't think anyone on the commission suggests that, but the illusion is there in the commentary, and it's not specific to Harm's Woods. And therefore, we are not the only danger in a migratory path in the Chicagoland area. That's all I'd like to supplement. I appreciate you allowing me to do so.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Pugh, do you have anything to offer?
No, I think we'd like to wait until after Mr. Ebert.
Okay. Actually, that is a separate case. And I'm ready to move on this,
Actually,
these
Paul,
4 points in case 2021-25P.
Paul, we were actually we're gonna hear Mr. Ebert first.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I just thought that according to what I've got here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but his cross-examination for petitions it involves 2021-24P, the zoning chapter.
It's both 24 and it's both 24 and
25.
25. Yeah, and we did discuss
all right.
it.
Okay.
The Corporation Counsel's office discussed
All
it.
right. All right.
Yes, and sorry,
Mr.
Chairman Luke, I would like to just
Yes.
weigh in that we also, as I mentioned, Carvana voluntarily agreed to this extra meeting, and we are in agreement with Tyler that we would like to allow Mr. Ebert to have his cross and then close out.
Okay, very good. All right.
now.
Alex, want to admit Mr. Ebert to the forum?
Yes, he's being admitted now.
Okay. Mr. Ebert, hi, you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself. You're muted. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ebert.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
All right. Thank you. Let me just get myself together here.
Sure, Mr. Ebert, before you
Okay.
begin, just to kind of lay out some of the ground rules, so to speak. Obviously, you have the right to cross-examine the witnesses. Carvana is obviously represented by attorneys who may object to some of your questions. If there is an objection, just please wait for me to rule on the objection before continuing on. And I would ask that the witnesses not answer any question until the objection is ruled upon. Likewise, we would just ask that you obviously show decorum and that you try not to be repetitious and that you stay to the issues that are both relevant and probative. However, you will have obviously leeway. So with that being said, we are ready for you to call your first witness.
Okay, I wasn't, okay, a few points of order. First of all, I thought the chairman would be the one to rule on any disputes of questions and answers. Am I getting something wrong?
No, I can also do that.
Yeah, I'd like the chairman to rule on it because you're in the committee, you're the chairman. That's what I would prefer.
Well,
Second one
respectfully,
is,
sorry, Mr. Eber, not to cut you off, but I am technically the presiding legal officer. So any of the objections that are raised by Carvana, I'll rule on. And typically, the chairman takes my advice. So I
Yeah,
would
but-
just ask that it take place that way, and that's the way
No,
we.
but whether he takes your advice or not, I mean, that's irrelevant. The chairman has to rule on it, not you.
Well, why don't we just proceed then?
Okay, all right. So a few house cleaning, so to speak. First, I want to, in response to Asher, who is a very respectable member, of course, of the community here at Optima. I am a resident. I would say that the conditions that he may agree to is what he agrees to. He represents, I believe,
We'd like
9 people.
Carvana would like to interpose an objection at this point. We're here for cross-examination of witnesses, not further commentary or argument.
Well, I was just making a point of order there, that they don't represent, he does, what his agreements don't
Okay,
represent me.
but just
Okay, all right,
continue.
next one, next item, I'm sorry?
Please continue.
Okay, next item is that I did, given that, you know, at least by December 6th, Skokie knew that there was going to be a remanded hearing. I was only notified of this hearing and my right to cross-examine on December 21st. And I didn't get a list of witnesses until right before the holidays, December 24th. Essentially, I'm expected to cross-examine 6 witnesses and prepare for it in about a week and a half. I think that's unreasonable. So just for the record, I'd like the committee to take a vote on it. I'd like to ask that you continue this hearing and the vote until I have a opportunity to sufficiently prepare. I think in any court, you know, any case, they wouldn't expect anyone to cross-examine, prepare in a week
Mr.
and a half.
Ebert,
I'm not even an attorney.
I have to remind you, this is not a court of law. This is a public hearing or hearing. And
I know.
I'm opposed to rescheduling.
Okay.
I'm not going to postpone.
Are you objecting to, I would request then, and again, this is just, I want to get it out of the way. I'm not trying to step on your toes. I respect you. I just want to know, are you objecting to taking it to a vote?
The chairman has the authority.
No,
to
it's
deny
not.
requests.
Okay, all right, that's it.
It's
All right,
by
next
decision law.
item is that, next item I wanted to get out of the way is, you know, I am requesting that the board, that the commission subpoena a number of witnesses. I already submitted that, and I just want to get on the record.
Again,
whether-
Mr. Ebert, we do not have the power of subpoena.
Right, I don't agree with that, so I just want to get you on the record that, first I will request you take a vote and want to get your reaction, and then we can move on.
I can't believe it.
Mr. Chairman, Donna Pugh
Yes.
here. Yes, regardless of whether you do or do not have the subpoena power, it is highly not relevant what the president and chairman of Carvana, they have no knowledge of this. Relevance is
Well,
the.
you don't even know what I'm going to
Yes.
ask. Excuse me. You don't know what I'm going to ask.
Mr.
And you're
Ebert.
already talking about relevance. And, you know, you had months and
Mr.
months
Ebert.
to prepare. You called your witnesses. I think it's only fair. And especially based on the statute, allow me to call the witnesses. Now, you can disagree. I'm here. This is my time. Please stop interrupting. I'm asking the chairman to rule on it and to rule on whether he wants to bring it to a vote, and then we can move on. I just want it for the record. That's all I'm doing.
I can certainly state for the record, Mr. Ebert, that we're aware that you wanted us to.
I didn't ask you. You're not, excuse me, you're not the chairman. I'm asking the
Mr.
chairman
Ebert.
because you don't
I
have
think
any
I
authority.
think I answered your question, Mr.
Yeah.
Ebert.
What was the answer?
I answered your question.
Yes or no? Are you gonna subpoena?
No, I do not have the power to
Okay.
subpoena.
All right. Okay. All right. Now,
Mr.
finally,
Ebert.
I have some last things. I have exhibits. So for the cross-examination, I want to know, I would like to submit it to you. I could do it after. I could email it to Alex now. But, you know, it's 3 different files because there are a lot of exhibits. So I want to know what you want, what you prefer in that. I do want that to be on the record. And also I have a presentation I'd like to share with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ebert, could you kind of collect yourself and submit things in an orderly fashion?
Again, Mr. Chairman, the reason things aren't submitted in an orderly fashion is that I barely had any time to prepare. I was literally preparing up to the last second. So, I mean, if I had the kind of time that Carvana had, I certainly would have been able to prepare and give everything in the right order. And again, nobody ever told me.
You seem to have
process.
things, that you want to submit. And
I do, I just don't know
asking
who
you
to submit it to. Okay, and if this was an in-person hearing, I would have submitted it to right in person, but it's not. So my question is, what do you want me to do with it? Because I do want it to be on the record. It's just housekeeping.
You could submit it to the department either by email or
Okay.
mail.
All right, thank you. I'll submit it to Alex Franzen, if that's okay. All right.
That's fine.
All right, so I'd like to call Brett Sassenberg. I don't know if I have his name right, but let me first share my presentation.
Mr. Ebert, just so you're aware, you're allowed to cross-examine witnesses, but there's not going to be any presentation. So feel free to ask
This
any
is relevant
questions.
to the cross-examination. I'm asking them questions based on the presentation. It's relevant to the cross-examination.
You can use
It is.
exhibits.
The presentation is the cross-examination. I'm asking them to look at items and then respond. I'm not, that's it.
Okay, that's fine. It may sound like you had a
Okay.
presentation, but if you want
No,
to.
no, no. When I apologize. When I said presentation, I meant to say that just for stuff for the witnesses to look at. Okay. All right, I'm going to share it now. Let's see. Give me a second. All right. Can you see?
Yes.
All right. All right. All right. Mr. Sassenberg, thank you for being here. On November 18th, 2021, in the Plan Commission hearing, you swore to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, correct?
I did.
Okay. Mr. Sassenberg, what is your title and job function at Carvana?
I am the Vice President of Retail Design and Development. I run our retail development function at Carvana, which is primarily vending machine expansion and office expansion.
Okay. And how long have you worked with the company?
6 years, actually, in December.
And when was the company founded?
9 years ago.
So you've been there for, let's say, the majority of the time, is that correct? Or
I've been
quite
there
a long
6
time.
years.
Okay.
Mr. Ebert, could you just move along? I believe we've established his credentials already for the record.
Well, it's relevant to the question I'm going to ask if I can't establish.
Well, what's
items. All right. So I want to. So my next question is Carvana's publicly traded, right?
You know, Carvana is going to object at this point, Mr. Chairman. This is completely irrelevant to any of the issues.
You have no. Excuse me.
I agree.
He brought up. Excuse me. Let me respond. The witness brought up in his presentation over and over again about Carvana's performance, the strength of the company, the fact that the fact that it was publicly traded. This was brought up by the witness, and I have a right to ask him about it.
Mr.
He brought it
Ebert,
up, not me.
he was certainly laying.
Brought it up. Do you want to know? Do you want to know where he brought it up? I can tell you where. I can show you on the video. I have the video ready. Will that help?
Take a breath. Hold on a second. Just let us get our words out too. He certainly laid the foundation as to what the business is, but whether it's a publicly traded company or a limited partnership just has no bearing on a site plan.
It is, because he brought up about the founder. He talked about the founder and the son and whether there's any issues there. And I want to question him about it because he brought it up.
And again, we object at this point to this entire line of questioning. The
You
founder.
can object all you want, but this is not a court of
irrelevant.
law. This is not a court of law, just like the chairman said. I should have
No,
an
no,
opportunity
no.
to ask my questions unimpeded.
Mr. Ebert, I'm going to ask you to limit your questions to the site plan approval and to the zoning chapter. Anything outside of that, I'm going to
But
have to
you did not
rule that
limit
you're
the
out of
witness.
order.
Excuse me, you didn't limit the witness to that. So I'm going to object to that myself.
And
Now,
Mr. Ebert, sorry, Paul, not to cut you off, but Mr. Ebert,
Go
also, when Carvana associates are talking, please let them finish, just like you should allow us to finish, just as
Okay,
we'll
go
allow you
ahead.
to finish. We'll hear everything you
No,
want
I'm
to
not a
say.
lawyer, so I don't speak as, I don't have all the mannerisms that they have. So I'm just a citizen. So if you could please bear in mind, I'm just a concerned citizen and not a lawyer, not homie to, think I'm going to talk like them and have the same decorum.
I'm just asking for
appreciate it.
common, I'm just asking for common etiquette to let him
Okay,
finish.
go
while
ahead.
you finish.
And I apologize. It's hard when you're on Zoom. It's kind of hard to kind of gauge who's talking to who. So I apologize if I, can I
Okay,
continue?
Mr. Ebert, I'm not a lawyer either,
Okay.
but I'm just asking you to stay within the confines of the site plan approval in case 2021-25P and the zoning chapter amendment in case 2021-24P.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is relevant because
it's not relevant to the case. What the petitioner testified as an enhancement is not, it's what he was just clarifying his stature and his standing in the case.
Well, let me try to ask like this. Let me ask this question. Mr. Sassenberg, is it true that Mr. Garcia owns 85% of the company?
Objection to the relevance.
That too is irrelevant.
All right, well, I'm going to go through every single one of my questions and you could object and it'll be on the record. So you want to object? And if you want to, Mr. Chairman, if you want to just take everything they said, that's your choice too, but I'm going to go through my questions and if they object and you agree, it's going to be on the record. Okay? All right. Now,
you can go down your list.
I'm going to go down my list and let them object and I'll let you rule on it, but at least it'll be on the record. All right. You mentioned in your last testimony, and I'm going to quote you, I'd like to address a little bit of some of the concerns about our business and about our founders' father, starting with our founder's father 30 years ago. Our CEO, Ernie Garcia III, was 10 or 11 years old, had nothing to do with concerns that his father may have been dealing with 30 years ago. That's what you said. If you like, I can show you the, excuse me, let me finish my question. If you want, I can show you the video, which I have. Now,
we can tell from the question where you're, Mr. Ebert, we can tell from the question where you're leading.
Now you failed to mention the situation. Now, is the situation true, correct, or false? Is the situation, according to Wall Street Journal reporting, which is in my exhibit number 2, that Mr. Garcia II became embroiled in one of the biggest financial scandals in recent decades when he took out a loan to facilitate a real estate transaction that benefited the Charles Keaton Lincoln Savings and Loans Association before it collapsed, and has been convicted of fraud in 1990 for a role in the Charles Keaton Savings Loan scandal. Is that true or not true?
Objection, completely irrelevant to anything involved.
I concur. The question is
if you don't want to, irrelevant. Again, Mr. Chairman, he brought it up himself. You allowed him to talk about the company, about the father. Again, he himself said he wants to address it.
Mr. Ebert, again, this hearing is not. No, Mr. Ebert, this is not a court case. This is just a public hearing. No.
Examine the witness. All right. Well, then if you don't want to allow him to answer, it'll be on the record. The next question. You go on to claim, and I have that also on video, that they're unrelated father and son. He's not a board member, only a shareholder. We're a publicly traded company, but you failed to mention, based on public reporting in Wall Street Journal, and I have that exhibit, the following. Is it true that while Mr. Garcia II is not a Carvana executive board member, he controls around 85% of its voting shares?
That too is Mr. Ebert, that question is relevant.
Okay.
I can tell where you're going.
Let me finish. Listen, I haven't heard you interrupt Carvana the way you're interrupting me. This is just patently unfair, okay? You're not giving me a chance. I can't, every single question is you're throwing obstacles at me. And these are things he brought up. If you wanna, let me at least finish my question. If you wanna rule, let them object. Nobody even objected to it, and you're already stifling me. Okay? So is it true that he also profited handsomely by selling $3.6 billion of Carvana stock since October 2020? True or false?
There are multiple objections to that. It's irrelevant. There's no foundation for it. It's been asked already, and the chair has already sustained an objection to it.
May I respond? Let me respond to his objection. You said it's not a court of law, and he's using court of law. This is, again, based on a testimony that Mr. Sassenberg himself said, and I want to be able to impeach the witness. I should have the ability to impeach the witness. He's coming as a witness. He's saying testimony under oath about his company. I'm not allowed, how am I going to be able to present to the board whether or not he is, whether or not he is,
hearing, the public hearing does not have the standards of a trial. What you're saying is just not, it's not coherent with a public hearing.
But if that's true, then you're allowing Mr. McKenna use trial legalese to stifle my questions. If it's true that it's not a public hearing, if it's not a court of law, then his stuff equally shouldn't apply. I mean, it's basically his patent. It's not basic fairness.
Mr. Reber, what we're trying to explain to you is the shareholders or whatever their father.
Sir, you're not. Excuse me. You're not the chairman. I'm talking to the chairman.
No, he's our legal counsel.
Well, and if you want to direct the answer to him, fine, man.
Speak.
Just let me speak here, Ms. Reber. You obviously have a standing objection. We understand what that is. You want to talk about shareholders or the actions or inactions of what the shareholders' father.
No, I want to be able to impeach the witness. I want to be able to impeach the witness, and you're not giving me the ability to impeach him. I'm talking about his testimony. All right, I'm going to go on to. It sounds like you're objecting to this question. You're not allowing it to go. Is that right, Mr. Chairman? You're not going to allow him to answer?
No.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Mr. Sassenberg, you also failed to mention that Mr. Garcia III spun Carvana out of Drive Time Automotive Group, a company started in the 1990s by his father, Ernie Garcia. And Mr. Garcia grew up around the business and went to work there shortly thereafter. Is that true?
Same objection.
And Mr. Reber, I'm going to have to rule that you're out of order.
Well, I obviously object to that. And, you know, again, this is all on the record. So, I mean, I guess if it does go to court, I'm confident that a judge, given the statute, will rule in my favor. But if you want to continue stifling me, go ahead. I'm going to keep asking my question. Now, I'd like to show you the PowerPoint. Can you see it?
Again, this PowerPoint from.
But nobody raised the objection. You raised it. Allow the opposing counsel to raise the objection. If they don't want to answer it, you don't know if they don't want to answer it. Every single question, I would like the opportunity for the witness to answer. If the attorney wants to object, then let him object. And I have a right to respond.
I would ask the chair and corporation counsel to instruct counsel that he's been granted leave to cross-examine any of the witnesses on the substantive issues involved in the site plan application. He hasn't asked one question yet that touches in any way.
I haven't been able to ask that question because you keep interrupting me.
He wasn't done. He wasn't done speaking.
Go ahead.
And I would ask that Mr. Eber be directed to focus his questions solely on the merits of this application, because we're wasting our time. It's getting late at night and he hasn't asked one relevant question.
That's in your opinion. It's late at night because I've been scheduled here. I would have been happy to be scheduled first, but you scheduled me at late at night. And I wonder why that is, Mr. So anyway, I'm just going about relevance. What your witness said, I'm trying to impeach him. That should be basic right of any cross-examination if you want to go legalese. And so far, instead of allowing me to get to anything else, you keep interrupting me. So I'm going to keep asking the questions. You can object. If you want to drag this out, this is my time. If you want to drag it out, it's up to you. Or if you want to allow it to go through quickly, then I would suggest that you keep quiet, all right? Now, all right, if you see this picture, you don't want to answer this, is right? Let's go to the next one.
Mr.
How about
Ebert,
this picture?
Mr. Ebert, we're trying to
Mr.
say
Kiblisky,
that- hold on, let me
What?
just, what I'm going to say. We have already ruled this entire area of conversation or of inquiry is just out of bounds. I would ask you to move on to the next issue.
I'm going to move on from each question. You don't know what my questions are, so you don't know what's out of bounds, what's not out of bounds.
If you're not going to abide by our rules, and if you're not
all
going
right.
to abide by the proper
This
sequence.
is not your rule. You are not the chairman, so I suggest you keep quiet. Now, let me ask Mr. Sassenberg a question. Do you believe that the financial performance of your company has any bearing at all on this project?
Mr. Ebert, I find that your line of questioning is totally out of order. If I think that you could continue this line of questioning, I'm going to end this session.
You could, and I will object to ending it.
You can object, but if you continue with this line of questioning, I will end it.
So you're saying I can't ask about the company? Let me just get this for the record. I can't ask about the company performance, whether it would be able to be a stick around and be a good neighbor?
No,
I can't answer at all. It's not relevant.
Mr. Ebert.
So wait, hold on a second. I'm not a lawyer, right? Why don't you give me some of the topics I'm allowed to go into that you believe I can go into? List it and I'll write it down. Because right now, you've given me nothing. All you're doing is throwing roadblocks in my path. So why don't you tell me what I'm allowed to ask?
You're allowed to ask questions pertaining to cases 2021-24P, the zoning chapter amendment, case 2021-25P, the site plan approval.
And that is what I'm asking, I believe. All right, let me go
No,
on
you're not.
to,
You are not doing that.
all right. Now, Mr. Chairman, would I be able to ask about issues of pertaining to the fact that they were banned from a state from doing business? Is that at all relevant?
No, you're not.
Okay.
There's not it's irrelevant in this hearing.
There's no balance. So if their business practices may cause danger to the community, that's irrelevant. So you're saying that if
Totally
any
out of
business practice.
bounds.
So I'm just trying to narrow down the scope of what I'm allowed to ask. If you could please allow me. Can I ask any question that shows that Carvana may pose risk to the community? Their project.
Mr. Ebert, the plan commission.
Yes or no? I'm trying to work with you.
So
yes or no?
No.
You're not giving me anything.
We make decisions on land usage.
Right.
Right. Okay. So let me rephrase my question. Can I ask any questions that the land use that they are proposing will affect the community negatively?
You can ask that question.
All right, fine. Then I'll skip to that. Now, it's true or not that consumers have filed dozens of complaints with state regulators and hundreds of
that is not a land use question.
It is a land use question because if they're there and community is buying from them and they can't get their titles, I mean, that has no bearing on the community, you're saying?
No, not on the land usage.
All right. How about the following topic? The topic of selling and transporting cars without licenses. Can I ask about that, Mr. Chairman?
No.
Okay. Again, I'm not doing this to be a smart aleck. I'm doing it because I'm legitimately trying to figure out what I can ask based on your rules.
Just to assist you, Mr. Ebert, the cases are a site plan, so you can obviously ask questions about what they intend to build and how it can affect surrounding neighborhoods, birds, as we've heard, truck routes, all those kinds of issues. The zoning chapter amendment and why a car dealership should not be included in a CX district. But all the issues you're raising right now are just not pertinent to the case at hand.
All right, well then we'll go, well, let me move it. Let me, again, I have to, if you give me a chance to look through my questions, I'm gonna try to find something that would fit Mr. Chairman's guidelines. So if you just give me a second while I look through.
Out of respect of everybody's time, Mr. Commissioner, or can I ask a question, Chairman?
Yes,
Chairman
Commissioner
Luke?
McKay.
How
Yeah, I have
long?
Okay, I would like to talk about the environment. Excuse me.
Hold on, Mr. Eber, a second. Commissioner Matei is speaking, but he's a little bit broken
I'm
up.
sorry, I couldn't, again, I apologize. This is a Zoom. I'm having trouble hearing. I don't have the greatest audio. It's not to be rude, so please keep that in mind.
Just hold on a second. Commissioner Matei is trying to speak.
Question is related to how much time this is going to take and how long we've given for this cross-examination.
I'm gonna try to get it done as soon as possible. I think, again, going back to what you've been hearing, that if I've been allowed to ask my questions, we would get this much quicker.
Great.
That's the only thing I could offer.
And they're pertinent, I'm willing to listen. Otherwise, I'm going to drop off and we will not have a quorum. And that'll be problematic for all of us. Thank you.
Well, again, I think that you dropping off in order to stop cross-examination is legally problematic, but let's that be it as it may. All right.
Well, if I
I'm going to ask about, I'm going to move to,
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Mr. Chairman, if council, if Mr. Ebert can't demonstrate a single relevant question, there's a lot of important issues.
Excuse me,
that
I
we
will
addressed
demonstrate.
here tonight.
Mr.
If
Ebert.
we haven't had one single question yet, I'm going to move to terminate cross-examination because he's just
So you can move
wasting
to terminate
everyone's
what you want,
time.
but
Mr. Ebert. Mr. Ebert, you're muted. Mr. Ebert?
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
Listen,
I'm going to
Mr.
go
Ebert.
to, I'm going to go to I'm going to go to an item which I think you'll be relevant. You said affecting land use. Let's see here. This is
Mr. Ebert, I warn you. Mr. Ebert, if I find that the question is irrelevant, I'm going to end the session.
Well, you can end the session for this witness, but you're not giving me, you don't know what I'm going to ask for the other witnesses.
No.
I don't
I'm
think
going to
that's
end
fair.
your session.
Okay. And I would object to that. Now I'm going to, I have a exhibit I'd like to show on the screen.
Mr. Ebert,
Yes.
Please. Ask
Please
your
let
question.
me ask my question. Come on. Please let me ask my question. You said you want me to ask you about
I'm
land use.
asking for the question.
Relevance.
All right. Okay. So the question is that I want to talk about the environment, which I think we can agree is something that's fair play, right? Mr. Kissel said, I don't know if you agree with him, that no offsite environmental, there'll be no offsite environmental impacts. Is that correct? You believe that your land use here will have no negative offsite impacts, environmental impacts? Is that true?
Are you addressing that question to me?
No, Mr. Sassenberg, I'll get to you next. Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Sassenberg.
Mr. Ebert, what was the question?
Do you agree with Mr. Kissel's statement that no offsite environmental impacts?
So I object to that question.
Yeah.
It's improper because you can't ask one witness to comment on another witness. If he has
All
something
right, let me
to
ask it
ask
this
Mr.
way. Hold on,
Sassenberg, that's
let me
fine.
ask it this way. Do you believe, let me ask it this way. Do you believe that your project will cause any negative environmental impacts, negative impacts to the community, would be it vibration, noise, anything? Do you believe that it will cause any negative impacts?
I would want a lot more specificity from you as to what you consider an
All
environmental.
right, let's do some specificity. So let's talk about, do you believe that your company, that your project will follow the conditions of unloading and offloading within the proper time, and that you won't be offloading early hours in the morning and late at night?
I believe we
Is that correct?
stated to the record and in this particular case that we're going to limit the hours of operations for our logistics trucks. Yes.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. And you agree that you're going to store things properly. You're not going to store things illegally in an illegal manner. Store things off-site in an illegal manner. You agree?
I don't know what things you're talking about.
No, let's say you go and store a truck right on the grass where the forest preserve is.
I don't know why am I doing that?
Would you do it?
Oh,
Would we park in the preserve?
So
Would you do any?
I'm
You asked me for an example, but I'm asking if you do.
I'm going to object to that question because it's completely hypothetical and irrelevant to anything that we've actually proposed or that anyone has
Well, I'll
commented.
explain to you why it's relevant, because I have a letter here from the city of Pomona, California.
This is not
regarding
relevant.
Similar.
So
It's not irrelevant. Everybody was able to bring up.
so now I'm going to
you brought up
object
different
to.
Carvana. It's not. I'm not going to object.
I'm going to object to.
Excuse me, if you read here, if you look at the presentation, it says your current operations, this is a letter to Carvana. Your current operations have created a public nuisance.
Commissioner,
Many
I'd like to
residents-
ask, what
Mr. Chairman,
I'm not sure what we're doing.
Mr. Ebert, you're starting to stray.
Okay, well, is it yes or no? Has the city of Pomona sent you a cease and desist letter about your activities? Can we, in other words, can we trust that Carvana will follow?
completely irrelevant.
Mr. Ebert, that's
All right,
irrelevant.
let's go.
Mr. Eber, if you want to ask him if he's going to park his cars in the forest preserve, I'm sure he would say no, but.
I imagine it's illegal.
He asked me for an example. And so you believe we can trust your company to not violate the health and safety, not have issues with exhaust, trouble with vibration, noise, operations that extend well beyond the normal operating hours. That's what you think we can trust your company.
Again, which part of that is a question to me? Do I think you can trust
The
us?
question, can we trust your company when you claim that you're not going to have excessive noise, you're not going to have excessive vehicle exhaust?
How do you define
all those?
excessive noise, Mr. Ebert? I don't.
I don't know. You
Again,
tell me how you define it.
Louder than
How would
the
you
freeway
define it?
adjacent to your building? What noise?
How would you define it?
So
Again, council.
excuse me,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Assistant Corporation Counsel. He's now arguing with the witness. At this point, I move to terminate all further cross-examination. Mr. Ebert is abusing the process.
Well, excuse me. No, there's been no, this, as far as I understand, this has never been done before. I've never been given any rules to the process. If you want to argue about terminating this witness, that's your purview, but I should have the opportunity, at least for the other witnesses I want to call, you know?
No,
doesn't have to do with the other.
Mr. Ebert, I warned you, this is your last chance. Your next question has to be relevant to the cases at hand, or else I am going to
But I've been
terminate.
asking about whether he thinks we can trust him to.
That is not relevant to the question, to the cases.
Okay, I mean, I disagree with that. Now, okay, so I think given that you're not allowing me, you're basically not allowing me to ask any more questions, I'm gonna move on to Mr. Kissel. Let's see how we can do with him. And I just want to say for the record, I object to you not allowing me to ask my questions. And I definitely, I just want that to be for the record. So I call Mr. Kissel now.
Yes, sir.
Before I ask do I have the, am I allowed to ask him about his expertise as a witness, capacity to be an expert witness, or that you're going to say, Mr. Chairman, or that's going to be irrelevant?
It's relevant because that's been established.
All right. It's been established, but there's been no opportunity to impeach, and the cross-examination wouldn't be an opportunity to impeach. So I object to that. I'm going to try to go on to something that I think you might find relevant. So, you know, you are an expert, and again, part of your expertise, right, is to show graphics, right? You're a land use planner, correct?
That is correct.
So, what?
That is
so
correct.
I want to ask you about. That's correct. Okay, so I want to ask you about that. And in your presentation, you showed the following. Can you see my? Can you see my screen? What I'm sharing?
I can.
You CAN or CANT?
CAN. Yes, I can see it.
Okay, I'm going to go down. Well, actually, let me share. How about this? I'm going to share this picture. Can you see this? This Carvana tower?
Not yet.
Okay, so forget that. I will then just go to, hold on a second here. Let's see if I can find it here. All right, how about now?
Yes.
All right, so this is your, I mean, you presented this, right? Just, I don't want to put anything in your mouth, but you had this at the last meeting, right?
I believe that is included in at least one
All
slide.
right. All right, and about how far up are we here? If I said we're about 15 feet, would that, or 10 feet, would that be in the range from this area here?
When you say high, how high we are up, what are you asking?
Oh, like from this point, how high from the ground, this point, would you say we are? Would you say this is?
Well, are you talking about where your cursor is?
Yeah, where my cursor is, like from this view here.
I have no way of knowing. I would be guessing.
Can you, what's your best guess?
I have no way of knowing. You're asking.
All right, because I want to ask about the you know, his presentation. So, you know, this is what you use in order to, you know, present it to the commission in order to get this plan approved. But I noticed when you zoom in, I just want to know where at the Carvana lot do you see this football stadium?
We don't. This is not a rendering of the Carvana project. It's a representative rendering of another Carvana project, another location.
Do you have any other Carvana projects that are 15 tiers?
What do you mean by do I have?
Does Carvana have any other project this tall?
I don't know.
And would you disagree with me if I were to tell you that no, they do not? That this is the only one that's this tall, or it's proposed? Would you say I'm totally off, or?
It's possible that this is the tallest Carvana that's tower that's being
okay. So we agree that this is not Skokie. This is not near the Oak. It's not near the Optima. But this is what you presented when you talked to the commission as an authentic photo of what the project will look like, correct?
No, that is not correct.
So why did you have it in the beginning for, I don't know, a few minutes, I don't know how many minutes it was, but about 5 minutes, let's say. You were using this when you're discussing the Carvana project, you had this.
It's representative of the Carvana product.
But it doesn't, but yet your other picture showed actual Skokie, but not this one.
That is correct.
All right, okay. I wanted to ask you now, let's here, and actually this is to show that, you know, that tower is not anywhere in Skokie. I think we agree on it. I'm now gonna talk about, I mean, you talked about, okay, this is I think a very pertinent issue. We had, you know, you agree that like the structure is going to be pushed as far to the highway as possible because of visibility, right? You want cars driving by to see it, right? I'm not you, but Carvana. Based on your understanding of the project.
That is one of the desires of Carvana, and it's one of the attributes of its site plan on this location.
Okay, so I took since you made a representative picture, I made my own representative picture of, let's see if I have it. I don't think all right, never mind, I don't have that. Okay. But going on, okay, moving on. So, all right, now we heard in the last meeting, so again, you know, we heard from the last meeting that somebody, a witness, not a witness, but somebody from the community said, and I'm going to quote her. She said, we had a woman who said, and again, I could play the video if you want. She said she's very concerned about distractions resulting from the towers, right? She said, quote, I am very concerned because I am one of the drivers who get distracted. I drive to Naperville, I see Oak Brook lit up, and I tend to shift off. I imagine you're driving, you tend to shift off, or just so much moment. That moment can create an accident. I know that I have leave because I've gotten distracted. I can honestly say from a psychological point that there's a distraction now. Would you say that what is your reaction? Would you say she's lying, that she's wrong? What's your reaction to
the witness's reaction to some other person's testimony has nothing to do.
I'll redirect.
Matters before the commission.
I will rephrase. Do you think it could be? Do you think people driving by reasonably could be distracted during driving by because this tower, this big lighted up tower? You think reasonably people would take their eyes off the road and look at it?
So I'm sorry, could you restate the question?
Do you think is it reasonable to say that people driving by will take their eye off the road for at least a couple seconds, look at this big, is your illustrated tower, look at this big tower, and then shift away from the wheel, and maybe, do you think that that's something that's possible?
So it's completely objectionable to ask a witness, is something possible? Is something reasonable? It has nothing to do with the standards.
He's an expert.
In the Skokie ordinances, it has nothing to do with the standards for approval of a site plan or a text amendment.
I agree.
I think highway, Mr. Chairman, you so far have not agreed with a single thing that I've said, and every single objection that Carvana, I just want this to be for the record, every single objection that Carvana has made, you agreed with, and I don't think that's fair. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because the land use, if the building is lighting up at night, and he's a land use planner, he should know this. If a building is lighting up at night and people are getting distracted by the 94, which is right next door, I think that's a relevant thing to be concerned about.
Well, Mr. Ebert, if you would redirect your question to that matter, then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kissel, is it, as a land use planner, as an expert witness in land use planning, do you think that there is any risk that when someone drives by this tower on the 94, they're going to shift their eyes from the road and look at the tower?
I have no opinion regarding that risk.
Okay. But would you disagree with me if I said that? Would you disagree with me if I said, yeah, there's a big risk? Would you say?
Well,
that's
no,
crazy?
you're putting questions. You're putting answers to your own question.
Well, I was asking him, but all right, fine. Now, assuming that there is distraction, and you didn't voice an opinion either way, could at least we look at, from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that it says that, as you can see here, distracted driving is dangerous. And if it's true that somebody was distracted, would this not be dangerous?
Objection. He just testified. This isn't part of his opinion, and he didn't express any views on this in his expert testimony in this case. And it has nothing to do with the standards for approving either of these two applications.
I don't think so. I think that this is a zoning amendment. They want to change the amendment. This is not a site plan approval. So if they're going to go ahead and ask for a site plan amendment it's not relevant for the committee to hear whether or not this proposed land use is going to cause accidents. And it was brought up, this was brought up in the comments in last meeting and nobody objected to it. Mr. Chairman.
Reber, there's billboards all along highways. Optima has a glowing sign.
Mr. Kablisky, I'm not sure if I pronounced you right. You're not the witness. I'm not asking you. You're the legal advisor, and I respect that. But I'm asking the chairman.
Mr. Ebert, I would advise you to abandon this line of questioning and move on to something else.
Okay. All right. In that case, since you're not allowing me, and again, I wanted to say for the record, I'm objecting to that. You're not allowing me to even broach any other questions. I just want to object, and then I'm done with this witness. I just want to know for the record that he claims that he has no opinion on whether somebody.
He has answered your question.
I'm just noting for the record. Can I note something for the record? I'm not asking him a question. I'm noting something for the record.
It is on the record. There's no need for you to repeat.
I want to note it for the record. Okay, please. This is why
it's on
just
the record.
So long. Okay, but I want to note it.
Mr.
All right, now I'd like to ask. Okay, I'm done with him. Come on, please
give
me a chance here. I'm a member of the community. Listen, I'm a member of Skokie. I'm a voter. I'm a taxpayer. The way you're treating me is just terrible. I'm not here. I'm not paid. I'm not a paid person that's an expert that's making thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm here because I'm concerned of my community.
Mr. Ebert, please,
I think you should give me more respect. What?
Mr. Ebert? Mr. Ebert?
Yeah. All right.
Calm
I'm done
down.
with him.
Just continue.
Let's go to the next witness. I'd like to call. I'd like to call Bill Grieve. Is that the proper, is that the way I pronounce your name? I don't know if I'm messing it up, and if I do, I apologize. So Mr. Grieve.
That is, thank you.
Okay. Just quickly, you mentioned about the Holocaust Museum, and we had a lot of people concerned and, comments about the Holocaust Museum next door. I just wanted to ask you, you did mention the Holocaust controversy. Nothing panned out of it, right? That basically, there were traffic concerns with the Holocaust Museum. There are other concerns, and if I'm understanding correctly, you feel that those concerns didn't pan out.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I just want to. Did you know that? And I think this is very relevant. That the actual Mr. Chairman you were the chairman at this time. That all these arguments happened in 2001 regarding 5201 Howard. So I just wanted to raise that. Am I wrong? This is not that this is.
I object to that. That's a statement, not a question. And he's making
a question. Is that wrong? Is that wrong? Is it wrong that
it is wrong? It's wrong.
It didn't happen in 2001. Okay, I have an article for the record talking about that the plan commission approved the museum being built on 12/25/02. It's going to be in the record. That's a Skokie Review article. So that is 3 years before the Optima was built. And if you want to disagree with me, you're welcome to. I mean, does that sound wrong? That the museum, the Holocaust Museum.
What is the relevance, Mr. Ebert?
The relevance is that the expert came and tried to minimize the concerns of the community by saying, hey, you know what? There's a Holocaust museum, right? There are a lot of complaints about that too, like what happened on November 18th. But you don't need to worry about it because none of it panned out.
Mr. Ebert, may I interrupt you for a moment and ask a question of Mr. Matthew? Mr. Matthew, is your time still okay? I'm very concerned about this.
I'm almost done. Excuse me. You're very concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Ebert.
Mr.
I appreciate it.
You've had months to prepare. You have uninterrupted time now for 2 hours today, many hours.
We voluntarily came back for you, Mr. Ebert. So please understand, we are here to listen to you. I just want to make sure Mr. Matthew.
No, you're not here to
Doesn't
listen
need-
to me. You're here to not, you're here for other reasons. That's what I believe. That's my opinion. Okay. So could you didn't answer the question. Is it true that the comparison benchmark you used for traffic, the museum was actually approved in 2003? Is that true, Mr. Greer? Is that yes or no?
I don't understand your question.
My question is that
The Holocaust Museum opened, I believe, in 2008.
Do you know when the Holocaust Museum, the Plan Commission with the chairman, who was the chairman then, do you remember when the Plan Commission approved the Holocaust Museum?
And point of order, what is the relevance here?
Because the relevance is that the witness testified, you know, and again, I could bring it up on video, that he testified that that the community was concerned about the Holocaust Museum zoning. And you know what? He made it seem, okay, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but, and you know what? He said that, you know, there were no concerns. So there's no traffic concerns. So saying we don't need to worry about Carvana. And what he left out pertinent to that is that your commission approved it 2 years before construction started. I think that's relevant. And I think
That's not relevant.
for your own, for you, I mean, you're the chairman. I think it's reasonable to ask him when the museum was approved by your commission.
It's not relevant.
Okay, so all right. So I object to you not allowing him to answer that question. Again, it goes to impeaching the witness. It goes to whether or not his expert testimony on the effects are reliable, whether it has any bearing on the Carvana, and I think it's not reliable. Now I'm going to ask Mary Lindenberger. I'm going to object to you not allowing me to ask him any more questions. So Mary did I pronounce the name right?
Pretty close, yes.
Mary Lindberger. I'm sorry
Correct.
if I mispronounced her name. Okay. So you know, you're an expert on valuation. You came here. I wanted to ask you about, you cited several comparisons to the project here as right. And let me try to quote you because this is important. You said that I mean, let me see if I'm right. You summed up that you concluded that there's not going to be a negative impact on the Optima development, right?
That is correct.
The Carvana. Okay. And some of the reasons you gave is because Carvana is a good neighbor, right?
That and other reasons as well, yes.
Okay, fair enough. You also cited, you know, you said that there are relatively few Carvanas that were within 500 feet of a residential development as a comparison to the proposed project in terms of valuation. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you cited Philadelphia, Cleveland, Memphis, and Houston. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and the reason why you picked those is because you said Cleveland, Memphis, Houston are actually single family developments, probably 100 feet to basically 200 feet of Carvana, right?
I believe so, yes.
Does that sound about right? Okay. Now let's first take a look at Philadelphia. Can you see this?
I do.
You didn't mention, okay, do you see the Carvana here?
I do.
You didn't mention that the Carvana is in the middle of an inner center neighborhood. Can we correct that this is an inner city neighborhood, right?
It's an urban neighborhood, yes. Mhm.
An urban neighborhood, not suburban. It's got these lots. It's got barbed wire. It's got a big overpass. Does this look like Skokie to you?
Well, it does because Skokie, the reason that Carvana chooses its sites is primarily, and Mr. Sassenberg will correct me if I'm wrong, because it offers incredible traffic exposure, and that usually means proximity to an expressway or a major thoroughfare. So this site is very similar to the Skokie site because obviously the Skokie site gives you immediate exposure on the Edens Expressway.
But so you don't see any other differences between Skokie, well, I'll show you the, you know, I think the map is here. This, a forest preserve versus this, there's no difference to you.
Mr. Ebert, I wasn't saying that there was no difference between the Skokie location and the other Carvana location. What I was addressing was the impact or lack of impact in instances where Carvana was proximate to residential units. And I concluded where that proximity existed, there was no negative impact.
Now, as an expert in valuation, do you think that the type of neighborhood, if it's very urban, if there's barbed wire, if there is graffiti, let's take another look at it. If there's graffiti, any of that, does that impact valuation? Could that perhaps come into consideration a suburban area with a, as opposed to?
Mr. Ebert, point of clarification, that's Fishtown and Philadelphia valuations have gone up significantly since we built that store. That's a gentrifying area. So I
wasn't asking you.
I
was asking Mr. She's the one I called, not you. So you're done. You didn't want to answer more questions. So let her answer. So you see, would also make a difference that there's a big billboard up here? Would that change the calculus of valuation as opposed to the Optima next to a forest preserve?
Well, Mr. Ebert, I'm trying to understand where your logic is going here. The Carvana site and the Optima site in Skokie are both in they're together in a high traffic location. There are other commercial buildings around there. There are high tension wires. I don't quite understand where you're going.
Is there a big billboard like this next to the Optima?
Optima, to my knowledge, does not have an immediately adjacent billboard. But
Right.
What does that have to do with Carvana?
That's my question. What does it have to do with Carvana, right? That was my question, really. You tell me, what does this have to do with the Optima, the Carvana project? But I think I don't want to
believe nothing to do with the Optima project in Skokie, nothing at all.
But you use this as your comparison for valuation.
No, I think you're missing the point of the comparison that I was making, Mr. Ebert. What I was saying is that there are instances where Carvana is near residential units, and in those instances, they have done no damage to those residential units' values. And I'm saying that the same will be true for the Optima development in Skokie. That's the comparison.
You're saying that an area that when you calculate value, the valuation of property, taking into consideration things like this, things like this billboard and this overpass and the graffiti, it doesn't, basically it's the same, right? Is that what you're saying? That you could, it's a fair comparison. Basically, you're saying it's a fair comparison.
So at this point, Mr. Chairman,
all right,
you've heard the same question 4 times.
All right.
Mr. Ebert.
Yes.
Mr. Ebert, I think we've been very patient with you. Mr.
Okay.
Ebert.
I'm going to move on. Yes.
Listen, Mr. Ebert. Mr. Ebert. We've been very patient with you. But I'm finding that consistently, your questions are totally out of line or totally out of context. I am sorry to say I'm going to end your session. I am just not going to. I am not going to submit.
I object.
I'm not going to submit the
Let me ask any of the other witnesses.
No, sir. Your time has ended. I'm sorry.
So you are covering up. It's clear what's going on.
Your time has ended.
I think you're on the side of Carvana. It's very clear. The Plan Commission wants this. That you're willing to do anything. You're willing to stifle any citizen participation. You're not going to allow me to impeach any witnesses. You're not going to allow me to ask about their valuations. You're not going to allow me to do anything because you are what?
Mr. Ebert.
I think the community knows.
Your session is ended.
I think the community. All right. Well, I guess we'll see what a court says. Okay. I think you should really take a look at the people of the community watching what you're doing and seeing how you're treating
Okay,
Personally to me,
good
I'm
night,
not an
Mr.
adversary, you're
Ebert.
treating me like one.
Good night.
Actually, Paul, if you don't mind, I would just like to ask Mr. Ebert if he has any written questions that he would like to submit. Mr. Ebert, do you have any questions written down?
I've written down questions. Again, I'm not I had no idea what the format was going to be. I've been up all night almost last night, and I have questions written. I haven't thought of sending in written questions.
Well, if you
I'm
could
a one-man army. I work full time. So yeah, I guess I would be okay with sending questions. And who would I send that to?
send them to me. You have my email. So if you have written
and you
questions,
will pass them on to Carvana? Is that the
we'll pass them
intention?
on to Carvana. And if
Can we
they're
get a
relevant,
commitment from Carvana now to answer them?
well, first let's see what the questions are. But if they're relevant and probative, let's take it from there. But send me the questions
right.
you have in writing. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, let me read this into the record. I read this before. I just want to remind all of you, commissioners. The matter before you is whether to amend the previously recommended site plan approval from our November 18th meeting to include any or all of the 4 additional conditions proposed by staff tonight in its supplemental report. I will now entertain a motion to amend the previously recommended site plan approval for Plan Commission Case 2021-25P from the November 18th, 2021 meeting to include the 4 additional conditions presented by staff tonight.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So are we approving it as it was written by staff prior, or do we have the ability to interject that we
You can
change
interject
it?
tonight if you like.
Okay, so if I were to make a motion to accept amending the prior decision, but with some substantive changes to what's been written, that's acceptable?
You can make it as a motion, yes.
Okay. So I know Mr. Matei or Commissioner Matei was going to make a motion. Would you mind if I at least presented my motion first?
Whoever wants to make a motion.
Mr. Berman, go ahead.
So I would like to make a motion that we do accept the amendment with covering the 4 provisions as brought up in the past, but as best practices, we amend the lighting one to require that we follow the American Bird Conservancy's recommendations to turning the lights off.
Specific on that?
Turning the lights off during the migratory seasons between 12 and 7, and that we amend the action of modifying the glass to include the feather-friendly covering for the entire height of the building.
Okay.
Commissioner Berman, just so I understand, that's all 4 conditions that you're making in a single motion?
I am. The other 2 provisions as provided in the report or in the substance, the amendment of the report, I wouldn't make any changes to.
Right, because there is the piece on item 4 related to the engines being turned off while loading and unloading, which Matt will add.
Right.
Okay. Do I have a second?
There was
Mr. Chair-
also, I'm sorry, Mr.
No.
Chairman, there was also a provision for lighting being allowed facing the east side, so facing the expressway.
Right, that's actually what I was just about to bring to your attention, is that we did clarify the point that Matt had brought up and provided a slightly edited version of that lighting standard to clarify that the dimming does not include the east side. Matt, I don't know if you can share that on your screen, or maybe Mike Noonan can.
I think, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Yeah, so I added this language here. In order to achieve this standard, Carvana agrees to reduce the power output 50% of maximum output on the southwest and north elevations. The east elevation will remain undimmed. So that's been added. I haven't added the other measures though.
And I guess in keeping with what I was recommending, that would be germane during non-migratory months, but during migratory months, the lights would be turned out.
I haven't included that yet.
Okay.
May I interject before you vote, Chair?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so we have a 5-2 recommendation with the original stipulations. We came back voluntarily for the cross. I'm concerned that we're now, and we believe we resolved these 4 items, and we were presenting how we would resolve them. And now we're running down new and more stringent restraints. And I do ask and appeal to the commissioners that we don't do that. We have the 5-2 recommendation. We are presenting as asked how we would resolve the originals.
I'm on video.
So just a consideration, because it just seems that now it's becoming more and more punitive, even though we had an original 5-2 recommendation. That's just my position. I appreciate you hearing me out.
Yes,
Okay.
and Mr. Chairman, I need to chime in on that we did agree to come back on the grounds that we would present for the 4 issues, but then have a vote on yes or no on those proposed conditions, and not go start adding new things and additional things. So we'd like to confine it to the agreement on these, yes or no on the conditions that are proposed.
Mr. Chairman, I would argue nothing new's been added, and no, we weren't consulted as a commission on those 2 items. And so now evidence has been presented at this from leading experts in the field and suggesting that what's been proposed is inadequate. And so now what we're following, in fact, the petitioner himself has used the American Bird Conservancy as an expert in part of it, and so has his expert. And we're just suggesting, or I'm just suggesting, that we do best practices.
Mr. Berman, if I may interject on the best practice, these aren't ordinances in any community that have been adopted. These, I think, best practices are not in place in any community. So we are twixt between what not to do or what best might be to do. And I don't know that anybody understands what best practices are. And without an ordinance, I think what we are doing is something to be commended. Again, we're not being forced into what would be an ordinance that I don't think you're going to impugn upon anybody else in the community. Are the new development standards in Skokie going to include these kinds of provisions?
Can't speak to them yet, but based on what we've heard tonight and the situation with your project relative to where it's being located, this seems to be what's being recommended by the majority of the people. Even your own expert said that certainly the 54 feet would not stop, and nothing's going to stop all of the bird strikes, but he didn't clearly disagree with the fact that going higher is going to be better. And we heard from the American Bird Conservancy themselves, the gentleman that was on and gave testament that 1.5 to 2 times the canopy would be superior to what's being recommended. And 54 feet is under the 60 feet that even San Francisco does. And so,
Mr. Berman, we have not found that research, and my bird expert can testify. We've never heard of 1.5 times tree canopy in any of the research we've done. That's the first time I've heard that at all in any presentation to me about what height it should be. I just believe they are asking for the moon because they want to see some level of protection. I just don't want to be the scapegoat for that.
Well, all I can say is my suggestion for modifying, or my recommendation for, or motion for modifying the changes, I would say stand. If it doesn't hold true and the commission votes it down, then the commission votes it down.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Commissioner Berman, if we were to unbundle the conditions, because there might be a genuine disagreement amongst the commissioners. So if we were to have 4 separate motions on the conditions, would you be amenable to tabling your motion and just going one at a time?
Sure, but what happens for the ones that are voted down?
They would not become conditions, or at least they would not be recommended conditions when they went to the Plan Commission.
Would it be reverted to the original condition?
Well, 3 of them are original. It's just the one that deals with the lighting is a replacement.
I think
Well,
the
the lighting issue has always been there, and it's part of bird mitigation, which has always been there. So no, I would disagree with unbundling it and having the possibility of losing the ones that we've already have there.
That's your right. Was there a second?
Since there's no second, the motion doesn't carry.
I misunderstood. I'll second it.
You gonna, Mr. Shaw, you gonna second?
Yes.
And may I ask, please, what exactly are we voting on? There's been a lot of discussion and I'm not clear.
From what I understand, Jeff's amendment would require the lights be turned off during the migratory overnight during the migratory season, and then the applicant shall install and maintain the ABC approved window markers to the exterior for the full height of the building. I think those are the two additions.
And just point of question for my clarification, please. If we vote in favor of Jeff's, the whole package, I understand it stands. If we were to vote it down, is there then a possibility of voting on the four possibilities as they were previous to Jeff's addition?
Yes, sir. Yes. If Jeff's motion fails, then it reverts back to the original conditions.
I think
And
what she's
then there
asking
could
is,
be another vote. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Cindy?
she's
And then
asking,
there could be another vote. Is that correct?
Yes, there could be.
Okay, I just need to understand that. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Berman, seconded by Commissioner Shaw. Call for the vote. Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin,
No.
Commissioner Giminahu,
No.
Commissioner Berman,
Yes.
Commissioner Matei,
No.
and I vote no. So your motion fails. Okay, I'm ready for another motion for the 4 points at hand.
Motion for the four amendments to case 2021-25 P be approved. The four motions, or excuse me, the four conditions that were originally proposed and the two that were amended.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Cindy, thank you very much.
I need clarification on that. What's being requested?
I'm sorry?
I don't, what is the motion as far as the amendments?
The motion is concur with staff.
Okay.
what about
With
the,
I believe the changes, right? Matt, you were adding the engines off during loading and unloading.
That's staff's recommendation, yes.
And the dimming conditions which have been amended.
On the east side, yes. Okay.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Call for the vote. Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Franklin,
Yes.
Commissioner Giminahu,
Yes.
Commissioner Berman,
No.
Commissioner Matei,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. So the motion passes. Okay, again, this case still has to go before the Board of Trustees for final approval. And I thank all of you for putting up with all of us tonight. I apologize. I tried to give Mr. Ebert as much leeway as I could, but after a while, he just ran out of rope. So, is there anything else before the board? Nothing? Then this meeting is adjourned, and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.